welcome to RLAfterShock, your coverage hub now for everything that is Rocket League esports in the European scene. I'm the Eternal Jay. I'm joined by Digital Bacon for episode 70 of the show. My man, how have you been?
I've been pretty good. It's been a nice previous week. You know, we're all starting to get into the rhythm of this seclusion lifestyle and how Animal Crossing is basically our savior to go outside. Yeah, it's good. I mean, just before we start, we're talking about turnips, so there we go.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm glad that you're taking all this in good stead, because I've not been sleeping whatsoever for the past week and a half or so. So I literally just woke up. I threw together the show plan last night, so fortunately everything's kind of okay in that respect, but for me personally, I'm in a state. I'm in a complete fucking state. So
nothing's fucking changed there. So
wow, Bacon, what a dickhead! What a complete dickhead.
Half of my job as your co-caster is to look after you, like babysit you. You realise this, right?
That's not even true. That's not even true. You fucking know it's not true.
How many times have I had to walk you back to a hotel?
What? When have you ever had to do that?
Switzerland, should we say the first time? Just as a reminder.
I don't ever remember specifically wanting to be walked back to a hotel. In fact, I went back on my own on the last night of the last TCS LAN, so I don't know what the fuck you're on about, Bacon. I really don't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. The only reason why I stuck with you on day one is because I had no idea where the fuck I was going. As soon as I did, it was easy as that.
Oh no, last Switzerland, I was feeling really ill during all of that, so I went back like proper early, like 8 p.m, didn't I? Yeah. It was like literally have dinner, go home.
I stayed till about like 1 a.m. or so, just chilling with the guys and fucking around, drinking like no tomorrow. It was a great land, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about some Rocket League esports. And as the off-season begins, the bubble scene starts to take its little stage, and we'll be covering all the bubble scene fixtures and such going on, especially from the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars and all the other Rising Stars tournaments that are going on at this point in time. We'll also be looking towards the promotion tournament this coming weekend as well. We're breaking down the potential for all the teams that will be playing in that one. And of course, we'll be talking about some big news that happened this week. In particular, one of the first high-profile cases of match fixing in Rocket League and the evolution of RLAfterShock. Yes, that is an anime reference. All here to come on the 70th episode of RLAfterShock. And I guess we'll start there, Bacon. A little bit of housekeeping for those of you who might not be on the social medias. If you aren't following us on Twitter at RLAfterShock, then you would have missed out on the launch of the brand new website. RLAfterShock.com is now the new home for everything Aftershock related. We have a ton of content coming out in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully going on in the future. For all intents and purposes, this is our take on like a Rocketeers or an Octane.gg sort of website. So we're doing a bunch of like insider reports, match reportings, like all sorts of features and discussions, opinion articles, everything in relation to what we talk about here on the podcast. That'll be transferred over in a written form now on RLAftershock.com. It's a project I've been looking forward to for the past like 6 months or so. We've been building it for the last 3. You guys may have known about it as SSP2, as one of the big sort of things that I've sort of been teasing over the last like few months or so. Well, that's basically what this is. SSP2 is Aftershock.com, and you can go ahead and go to that website and find all of our new content.
Yeah, and again, like Jay said, no hate towards Octane.gg or Rocketeers. Octane.gg seems to have changed over into a little bit more of a stats and reports website, which of course there's a valid need for, but for us we'll be providing that, as well as more feature pieces and more opinionated journalism, which of course has its own place in the world, doesn't it, Jay?
Indeed, and it's something that we don't see that much in Rocket League. So most certainly, if you want a different take on how Rocket League journalism is done, then it's RLAftershock.com, where you can go ahead and just keep up to everything over there. We've got all the necessary sort of features that you would expect out of a news website, including some stuff that we've recently had to break ourselves actually. So we've already gotten started with a few different pieces and bits and pieces going on. We've got some stuff about the SandRock gaming side, rumours on Triple Trouble, the Team Esper thing, and Ghost Gaming as well, potentially shutting down. So all sorts of stuff, not just in the European region as well. We've got a nice little team of writers and volunteers who are all helping us very kindly with their own time, and we probably will be looking to try and support them going forward. So you definitely want to keep your eyes on the podcast. We will be delivering a couple of bits and pieces as to how you can help out with that. But for now, just go ahead and take a look at the website, RLAftershock.com. And you can keep your eyes up and keep your wits about you as to everything that's going on. Right. Let's get onto the news, Bacon, because despite what I thought it would end up being a fun little slow week, and we'll just be able to talk about Mailbag and go into the results and just not have to worry about the political side of things.
We
in the last couple of days,
dip into our features, didn't we?
Yeah, we thought we'd have to dip into our features until this shit happened. Let's put it that way. So we'll start with the big thing that has dominated the subreddit over the last 24, 36 hours or so. Team Esper from the OCE region stand accused of throwing a playoff-defining game. This is a story, as reported by our very own Trox on the website, that the RLCS contestant Team Esper threw their last league game of the season in the LPL OC Championship. Now, this comes off the back of a weird situation where they were required to win for the likes of Renegades to take the victory, to take their spot in the playoffs. And as far to my knowledge as well, this was also a case that the Team Esper guys were also of the... They were kind of like the favourites in this whole thing, so they were they were the squad that everyone expected to be in the in position to take that final league play spot or that final playoff spot. But because Esper basically threw Game 5 of their match against Team Fury, they fucked it for them. And I've watched the VOD back. I've watched that last game. I've watched all the surrounding sort of context to it, Bacon. And it clearly shows that they got tilted and they couldn't be fucked after they lost their chance to make it into the playoffs themselves and therefore ruined it for another team, it seems.
Yeah, this to me, straight away, if you watch the video, VODs, whatever, go back, it is obvious as fuck. You can just see from kickoffs alone, because that's the thing, right? The moment you click the VOD, a big shout out to Trox for timestamping this, but you can see immediately 2 seconds in they score a kickoff goal because Esper just sort of their way into the kickoff. It's so all
obvious,
three
it's not even funny.
Go for the ball whilst not going for the ball. Let's just put that out there, which, yes, is very, like I said, it's obvious. The responses from the players afterwards feel like more excuses to try and cover their asses, and it's a little bit, yikes. And, of course, the follow-up to that from the org itself, Jay, just explain it.
Well, basically, after this went down, the Team Esport organization basically turned around and said, huge shout out to our Rocket League players for their hard work this season. Our time with them is drawn to a close and we wish them all the best in the future. Hope to return shortly. We also reached out to the guy who runs the organization. And he basically said that he was disappointed with what with what he saw, and they're not sure what happened or other than what it looked like or who was involved, and he wants to get definitive answers from Psyonix very, very soon, because obviously in response to this, the Psyonix team have turned around and said, well, in particular Shice has said, we take the integrity of matches extremely seriously, and any sort of intentional match throwing will not stand in our leagues. It's unacceptable and not representative of what we aspire for professional Rocket League to be. That being said, we are working on fully understanding the situation and are checking over game logs, getting information from players and reviewing the gameplay. Once we have a full understanding of what happened, we will communicate our decision, which I think is the right approach, by the way. I think Psyonix have cracked the nail on the head. They've certainly done a better job than Valve have at certain points. But I will draw attention to Rule 7.2.1 of the RLCS rulebook. Quote, each player is expected to play to the best of her or his ability at all times during any match. Any form of unfair play is prohibited by these rules and may result in disciplinary action. Now, I'm not going to lie. For me, this case seems pretty cut and dry. It's not quite as bad as some of the stuff I've seen in the past, like the iBuyPower CSGO incident and such, and, the 322 memes, for instance. But this is a clear case that they lost their chance to make it in, so they stopped trying, and thereby threw the match, to me. That's what I feel like is the case.
Yeah, definitely. It's obvious as really for that. And the reason why this is such a momentous sort of occasion, really, is purely that after being 2 games up, and they start throwing like that, and it is, like I said, very obvious, they had the decision of who goes through, because Esper couldn't make it themselves. If I'm correct in thinking, they were already on the confirmed for 5th place, and it came down to because they couldn't get past Cringe Society, whereas Renegades could. Fury could. It was either Renegades or Fury or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. And they had the decision who would take that 4th and final spot. And that is why it's just such a big blow up. If this was, you know, the 8th place team just throwing up against first, no one would really care, would they, Jay?
Well, the situation was that Esper needed to take the series in 4 games, else they would have had no chance. The game difference would have been too high to surmount. So, and that's obvious if you watch the whole best of 5 series. It's because, you know, like in games 1 through 4, they gave it their all. You know, I don't think there's any doubt towards that. But in game 5 is where they started fucking just losing the ability to give a shit, apparently. You know, like, and this is like on a different level to what I've talked about with the TEI, where obviously, like I said, that the pro players and the RLCS caliber teams didn't really give them too much of a damn about the TEI tournament. Well, you know, it's sort of the case here, but Esper to another level, because rather than, you know, at least holding a decent team formation and playing semi-seriously, but without playing to the fullest of their capacities, like, this is just straight up like, nah, fuck it, who cares? No one cares. It doesn't make a difference, so fuck it. It doesn't make a difference to us, at least. So fuck it. We're not going to try. And by extension, have screwed a team who I think are probably one of the worst luck runs over the course of, like, you know, their time in OC RLCS, because Renegades, like this team of Kami, Siki, and CJ probably should have made the playoffs. You know, even though right now they're not, because of what seems to be just shenanigans.
Yeah, and again, this is off of the back of a, you know, I'll be talking about in a little coming up feature on RLAfterShock, but it's basically off. OC is in a weird state right now with its old dogs, sort of like, who are still very much the top of the scene, having to fight against some of the new up-and-comers or, you know, other old dogs, and the whole state has sort of become very, I'm going to say, muddled, Jay, you know, where it's all been very compressed to the same level, and it's in a weird case against the rest of the world. So when you get teams like this who are ruining the show, especially after, you know, you had ESL and Gfinity step out last year, competitive integrity is big for tournament organizers who don't want to get involved in that sort of shit, do they? And they're now going to be looking at this going, these guys can't even take themselves as professional players seriously. Like, what are they going to do to us, you know, as tournament organizers if things don't go their way? And you've seen it before back in the early days of Rocket League, where teams would just DQ out of tournaments, not even shown up because they couldn't be fucked.
Well, I mean, obviously, that's a bad precedent to set for OCE as well, because, you know, they've struggled quite a lot, both from a viewer perspective and a talent perspective. You know, like their last performance at World Championship and their last international LAN didn't go so well. And, you know, although that's not to say this is OCE's fault per se, like, this is still not a great look, and it's not a great, it does a lot of negative impact, I feel like, to the region that really needs the most right now, more than anything else. You know, like, you know, South America's doing okay because they still have talented players. Like, you actually you want to rank them as top 10 in the world right now with their with the 11th side, which we'll talk about probably more on RLAfterShock.com. So, you know, again, if you want to get interested in that stuff, but yeah, no, for OC especially, like, you know, they need more support, you know, and the end result, of course, is this shit where, you know, they're not given a reason to get more support. It's back to the whole, you know, bubble scene talk I was having last week. Like, yes, you know, OC in the bubble scene, they need support, but stuff like this shows that they don't deserve it, or at least that's just a select few players. I mean, Esper certainly don't deserve it. I feel bad for Fury for getting caught in the crossfire, and I certainly feel bad for Renegades. I don't think this is as serious a match fix as people are sort of like laying it on to be, because, like, you know, there certainly could be worse things to do, like throwing for actual cash, for instance, and that's where the corruption really begins. But, you know, it's still a pretty shitty thing to do for Team Esper, and I think that there's not really, it's not really one of the most controversial topics to discuss, to be honest. It's pretty cut and dry. I think the whole scene is in agreement. I applaud Psyonix and I credit them for obviously turning around and having an independent look at it rather than just following the mob hype train, which is the right approach, by the way. Again, that's exactly how it should be done, and it's certainly better than other tournament organisers and publishers have tried to approach this in the past. So, yeah, credit where it's due. Good stuff, Psyonix. I'll be waiting for the we're waiting for the official report to come through, and when it does come through, we'll be reporting on it here on the podcast and on RLAftershock.com. The other thing we'll be reporting about is the latest rumours that will be occurring from here on out. And we're going to go through a couple of those. In particular, I want to give a shout out to Shift RL Esports, who have been keeping track of this on Twitter. I know a lot of people are sort of doubting whether or not these guys are legit, and I have to say that, you know, from my perspective and based off the people who are running it, You can trust them. You know, you can trust them. I have no reason not to trust those guys, because like it seems like all the information is legit. We've got roughly similar sort of information. Maybe not all of them are particularly on point, but based off of their accurate reports of the first couple of rumours that have turned out for the tryouts period, this feels like it's the case. It feels like it's the case that these guys are on point at the moment, Bacon.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like we say, just near enough confirmed with our sources and such that what they're putting up, it pretty much falls in line. For example, we'll quickly rattle off their little recap of the reported tryouts that are taking place this week. Drew's taking place over Rix Ronde, and Extra and Scrub looking to replace Gods Miller over on the singularity side. Now, again, with us, we had heard about the Scrub Killer one in for Gods Miller, and we knew that Rix Ronde was on the way out. Now, I didn't hear about Euros sort of stepping in. That was completely new to me, but understandable. And then going in further on, like looking at our sources, it was a possibility, and that Triple Trouble right now are just looking for a third, and they're being quite clever about this, Jay, because they're giving apparently him, a good bit of time to try and mold into the team. They've got backups. Rix Ronde isn't completely out the squad, but he's now sort of like, if you want to put it as a term, benched, where they're saying, Rix, if we can't find someone that's better for you in like 3-4 weeks, basically across the whole of April, because of course there is the spring series coming up at the start of May, and they'll have like the first week of May to practice again with Rix Ronde. They'll stick with him, but if they can find someone that's better, they're gonna have to make the move. And for Rix right now, like, I feel somewhat melancholy about this, because it's shown that the team understands he's a good player, but naturally they've got to look for, a new third. But at the same time, where he's sort of put in this stage of limbo, what happens to his chances of the spring series? Like, is he testing out with, 2 other players right now on a different team? What's going on with him? And that's just where I feel a little bit bad for Rix Ronde in this situation.
I mean, for me, it seemed obvious that Rix would be the man to go out, because, of those 3 players, you have to pick one to sort of cut. Tadpole, Bluey, Rix Ronde. Who's the guy you're going to get rid of? It's got to be Rix, Tadpole and Bluey.
Who's the lad who is hard stuck RLRS? That's the problem. Way to put it.
That's the problem right now.
Tadpole and Bluey have the possibility to go back to RLCS. They're definitely of a caliber where they can make a bottom 4 team push, I think. But it just comes down to the right combo and the right third to really fill out this roster. Rix Ronde, as a whole team, you could see there were times when it really did stick and they looked really good, but the majority of the season they were inconsistent, and it comes down to 3 players that just are not compatible.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that being the case for Triple Trouble. I mean, I still think that they had a bit more of an evolution to go, but I don't think they would have gone as far as maybe I initially sort of hyped it up to be back during the last couple of weeks of Rival Series when I was talking about them. Mm-hmm. But, obviously, Joras is a guy that is the guy that sort of is sort of like being touted as the new guy to enter. So I kind of wanted to talk about this a little bit, because recently he joined up with Calix and Archie to be part of the new Clapper side, the reformation of the 2018 team that everyone thought was going to be amazing, but in the end didn't really do that much. But I haven't seen much of him individually, so this is kind of a bit of a surprise thing for me. I wasn't expecting, of all players like Joras, to enter the scene and to enter the rival series with the likes of Triple Trouble. So Bacon, obviously you'd be a bit more knowledgeable than me on this particular respect. What is it about this guy that could do better than Rix Ronde?
So I haven't really had the greatest chance to see him in tournaments, but 6-mans and 1v1. Everyone, so there's the whole thing of 1v1 doesn't mean 3v3. It means pure mechanical skill, which we're just going to say you could see fit on into Triple Trouble, and you look to previous teams that have gone down this route of a 6-man's player who can work brilliantly, has got great 1v1 potential, and you'll notice names like, Astral popping on up and Flakes. And this you can see is Triple Trouble making the very logical, calculated decision of going with him. Now, for me personally, I thought this this third spot, honestly, I thought it was going to go Scrub Killer, because all the other teams sort of being, naturally with his want for a contract and it being very selective, we'll say, I thought he was going to have to fall back and get this team back up, and that'd be like the dream triple trouble coming back through. But naturally, that also relies upon Scrub to take the hit of ego, taking that step back from RLCS, which I don't think he's willing to do as well. So what they're looking at right now, Triple Trouble, is taking the risk, because realistically with Tap on Bluey, they should be safe in the RORS. This season, by all accounts, was pretty awkward for them as a team, and they still are absolutely fine to make it on through. So them taking a risk on a younger player who they can mold, be the way they want to, because he's fresh and is hungry for wins. I think it's a reasonable, pickup right there. The only problem is if he doesn't work because he can't pick up that competitive mentality over, more ranked 6-man sort of style. Who do they go with after that?
Yeah, I mean, at the rival series level, you should be picking out from the bubble scene anyway. But obviously, yes. I don't really know. I don't really know who Joris is. I don't know how good of a replacement this could be, and we don't even know if it's worked out anyway, because we haven't been leaked any. He's going to be
nuts. I can tell you that now.
You think he's going to be nuts? All right. Well,
I think with this addition, there is the potential for them to be bottom 4 RLCS again.
Possibly. Let's see how well they'll do. Again, that's stuff to be seen later on down the road. We don't even know if Triple Trouble are going to synergize with Joris and if they'll even pick him up to begin with. This is very early tryout rumors at the moment, so all of this should be taken with a pinch of salt. None of this is confirmed. None of this is official as of right now. But with that being said, we're going to move on to the Singularity rumors, because obviously they've been trying out players in place of God Smiller. And I guess we'll start with that side of things, because if there was one player to remove from Singularity, it had to be Gods. There's just there was no other person, I think, that could have been up on the chopping block other than God Smiller. Because you think about all the times that we talked about Singularity, and who was the guy that we always said was bringing the problems? It was Gods. Though was always powerful, Nolly was always powerful, but whenever we saw problems, we were like, oh well, Gods needs to pick up the pace, and it was like, well, he fucking didn't, basically. I mean, I don't want to say that's necessarily conducive to the way that Singularity ended off their season, because I think that at that point they were probably within that 7th position sort of slot, but it's clear to me that they wanted to go further, and I think again, very similar to the Triple Trouble state, there's one player you got to cut, it's God Smiller, and that kind of upsets me a little bit, because I like Gods and I think he's a cool guy, and he has been fighting for championship series for the longest fucking time. He's finally made it. He gets one season and then he's going to get cut. Poor dude, man, poor fucking dude.
So the reason why we say that is, if you look at Singularity, if they want to become a traditional team in the sense of their playstyle and such, then it does have to be Godsmiller going out. He is too much of a risk. And that comes down to Godsmiller's natural playstyle, where he just wants the ball chase all the time. He's super aggressive, and that works for the team, because though and Nolly behind him are able to easily pick up on that, they're very comfortable with each other, and they can naturally make gold out of the situations. This is largely how they took down the Vitality side, 3-2, was just purely of just continuously hounding them, being out their challenges. But the problem is, once the team gets smart to that, Jay, they'll just try and bait out Godsmiller, and you've seen that as well this season, haven't you? Yeah. To the point where then it is just near enough a 3v2 game by all accounts. The only problem is that initial move out from defense is slightly slower, because they've got to deal with Godsmiller first. Now, that is not good, because for me, this team near enough has a one-track mind. And we've seen the inclusion of Jake now into this roster has helped it a little bit towards the later last week, of course. But for them to now punch up and get into that top 6 spot to even maybe make a play for Worlds next season, they do need to bring in an extra man. And luckily for them, there is so many good players now ripe for the picking, isn't there? Because you look, like we said, Scrubber Killer straight there. You've got Extra, who is auto demoted as part of that AS Monaco side. You look towards, say, Endpoint and TSM right now, who are in that demotion stage, and naturally, if one of those two teams does drop, then those players most likely are going to be up for grabs, because we expect the orgs might drop on out. Definitely TSM will, from what our knowledge is, and Endpoint is sort of like a murky grey area, isn't it? So we'll see, but there are a lot of good players that are popping about. And then, of course, let's not forget that this team also has contacts, of course, to more bubble team players where they could pull through. Like, you look at Jorus there, subbing in for Ronde. I wouldn't even be surprised if they thought, you know what, we need a super aggressive player on this team, you know, a bit more like a side grade to Godson Miller that we can mold and really get going. Maybe he could even be right for a step up, you know, another Astral situation.
Maybe so, but the current moves have currently been sort of like, you know, players who are established, you know, Extra and Scrub Killer being the two guys that that have been there. And I think we maybe theorize the idea that Extra
to make a risk. That is the point at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, with Extra, we certainly like theorized in previous episodes that he'd be sort of like up to leave AS Monaco, because let's be honest here, he's probably worth better than that team, because like they were fucking trash throughout the entire season. And well, maybe Singularity could be a step up for him, but certainly I think it would be an upgrade for Singularity. It would be an upgrade for Extra. So that kind of makes sense to a certain extent. I think we were kind of theorizing that Extra would go to Reciprocity in place of Farah for one, which again would be an upgrade for Reciprocity for certain. But, you know, the other big thing, the other big sort of tryout that we heard about was Scrub Killer stepping in to try this out. And I think that's very unlikely, again, based off the contract stuff we discussed last week with Scrub trying to, you know, kind of protect himself with sort of, you know, like a contract to freelance basis of his play style. And it's like, I don't think most organizations want to bite with that. I don't see Singularity especially wanting to bite with that, because like this organization, they're not as massive as Vitality were. They're not as massive as Mouse Sports were. And the idea of them being able to pay the salary that Scrub Killer most likely will be asking for is also very, very unlikely to me. I think that while, yeah, they probably have been trying him out, I think the actual likelihood of a roster move coming through from Singularity to pick up the likes of Scrub Killer has a few more like... a few more like hoops to jump through before they actually get to that point. It doesn't feel to me like they're going to make this they're going to make this full on jump, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think personally you would have like chances right now, like we're talking with the Ex-Reciprocity lineup, would be more likely that Scrub would head on over there, because those guys, again, not wanting to take such a large risk as well. So it feels at the moment like Extra and Scrub are just basically the two players that have a good pick over the RLCS, because everyone knows their caliber, everyone knows their worth within the RLCS, and how a lot of teams are going to be trying to scrap together. And like I said, for me, Scrub Killer might, you know, should have the pick like he did last season. And if it was for me anyway, when you got Ex-Reciprocity who's trying to pick new contracts and new orgs, having that sort of option instead of trying to fit into an already cemented org might be good for him if he wants to continue that way and hasn't learned his lesson from Mouse.
Yeah, I have to agree. And that kind of summarizes the shift reported tryout rumors. I did want to talk a quick bit about the Reciprocity thing. Obviously, that sprung up last week, and we were doing our like dues to sort of like verify the sources. Obviously, the main thing was the idea that this source came to Dramorala and said, "Look, you know, I'm a friend of one of Reciprocity's former PUBG teams, so I know about the Rocket League guys." And the point is that they're going to get rid of Farah and try and get Scrub Killer on, which makes no fucking sense, because like it feels way too vague for them to turn around and just be like that and say this is what they're going to do this early in the off season. We did a lot of vetting on this source. We did a lot of research on this particular source. We actually got a hold of the source, even though they were, you know, known as anonymous. And we couldn't find any discernible sort of like connection between him, Reciprocity organization, or any of the Reciprocity players, both past and as of the lineup sort of like split away. So I have no reason to believe that this team, this particular source has any sort of credence to the Reciprocity brand. It's possible, and certainly I think that given the performances of Reciprocity this season, it's likely that Farah will be out. But I have have no reason to suspect why this source knows anything about Scrub Killer coming in.
No, it's just as simple as, like, you look at the current situation going with reciprocity, and anyone would just go, yeah, it's probably fair on the way out, and this guy just sort of trying to prod at it, and that's fair. People try and get in that clout, whatever, and it's just a general fan theory.
Yeah, and we have got some other reports that we're still trying to verify, some other things that are going on in the course of the Rocket League scene, and we'll certainly be bringing you up to date with all those as and when we can confirm and verify them over on the podcast. And again, RLAfterShock.com. Let's move on to our next story. Something that went a bit more remiss than I initially thought, actually, was this pretty funny story of an unapproved, unsanctioned $40,000 collegiate tournament hosted by UMG. Now, this flew under the radar of most everybody, with the exception of the subreddit that reported on this, which this tournament has a lot of things wrong for it for a lot of different reasons. Apparently, I didn't watch much of the stream because I couldn't quite catch it, and I think most of it's been deleted.
I didn't pick this up until the next day. Because, of course, it was an NA stream, don't get me wrong, but it was like the very next day, and everything was deleted already. Yeah, so I think Psyonix, how bad it is.
Yeah, I think Psyonix sort of sent a cease and desist, and they had to comply by getting rid of every evidence. But the screenshots are still there on Reddit. A $40,000 collegiate tournament with none of the actual CRL invites and shit. The casters are completely unknown to the Rocket League scene. I mean, you just take a look at the screenshot, and these two people who are sitting here, I have no fucking idea who they are. And that's saying something for guys who obviously are well connected in the scene, and obviously we know most of the casters, if not all of them, from most of the regions, if not all of them. We fucking,
and I don't even know them from other games. That's it as well.
That's the problem. So there was a big breakdown from Chewy, who sort of basically talked about this is the worst tournament I've ever watched, and this kind of cropped up the conversation about sort of the reason why Psyonix have the rules in place, and there was a bit of a back and forth on Reddit. So I kind of want to get into that side of the conversation, because obviously this tournament was a shit show, and rightfully so. It violated the rules that Psyonix placed in, so of course rightfully they got taken down. But everyone was like, this is the reason why Psyonix have rules in place to stop shitty tournaments from this happening. And I'm like, guys, you do realize that...
Hold up there.
Yeah. I was like, you do realize that the only reason why Psyonix are even involved in this conversation is because they set the rules in the first place. Other than their own involvement in taking down the stream and ceasing and desisting UMG, the whole conversation was surrounding UMG being being complete fucking idiots, complete fucking shitters, not knowing how to run a stream, breaking Vegas rules in regards to coronavirus, by the way, because my understanding is that their studio is in Vegas and they have a studio set up, which obviously you're not allowed to do that right now in America, or in most regions in America, as far to my knowledge. So that's violation of restrictions and laws in place. The fact that they're running a tournament which flew under the radar of everybody with $40,000, not inviting the necessary collegiate tournament teams from CRL who should rightfully have had their place. These are all the talking points that we should be talking about, and laughing at UMG for being absolute fucking idiots with this with this tournament. And the main conversation topic, or at least a decent couple of threads about it, was talking about the reason why the rules are in place, and they're in place to stop shit like this from happening. It's like, no, it's there to have Psyonix get the full control of the esport. That's the reason why. This is a byproduct of them. This is a byproduct of what the rules do as a good feature for the scene. But by no extension is it a set of rules that does overall good for the scene. That's absolutely not the case whatsoever. In fact, they do more harm than good, and this is one of the rare exceptions where it did more good.
Yeah, and you look at this and it's just straight up UMG, just incompetent company. Every single look at it. Even if there wasn't the restrictions in place, this would have still gone in ahead, and still would have been as shit. I wonder, Jay, straight off the bat, if they knew they were going against any single rulings, purely because it was announced 8 hours before it actually started. Now, I don't know any fucking company worth their salt that would do that shit, Not
even we do it in the bubble scene,
No, the only thing I can near enough put forward is Daz's skirmishes, where he's literally trying to plan it short, but that is, I think, $2,500, and it's purely to just try and suddenly go, well, you've got some days free right now. You can put it on. You know, it's not that same level, and he's announced it's still a couple days ahead of time because it's aimed at the bubble scene who are willing to jump straight on and into that.
And this is one guy, by the way.
Yeah. It's a complete different sort of ground approach. And you got to think, and I'm impressed by this, of how quickly Silix turned around, because he did go to them and ask for the support, and they've allowed it, which is great there. So, you know, let that be known out in the world as well. And it just comes down to, again, incompetence there. You saw the funniest thing for me was that video behind them in the background was
bot gameplay.
Playing. Like, you know, you couldn't have just gone on bullchasing.gg and picked up a random replay. The funny thing is, no one knew a single lick about Rocket League on that team. You know, the casters clearly didn't know anything about Rocket League. It was their first time. I reckon they must have just turned up on that day being told, you're going to be commentating over a game. Oh, okay, 8 hours beforehand. We've decided Rocket League. Okay, we're just going to look at some, you know, they probably just look at the world's replays, and that was good enough for them to learn about Rocket League. That hits us quite hard as casters looking at that. Because
so now you basically got a bunch of amateurs to do the job that we've been fucking doing for the longest time in the world, you know?
Well, no, it's more as a caster, just literally as professional sense, you don't cast a game that you don't know. Like, you literally, because that is, I'm going to say, almost career suicide, isn't it, Jay? You don't put yourself forward for that. Talking off that basis, I can remember doing the Red Bull stuff for Clash Royale a few months back in Switzerland, and that was after me going, I don't know this game, but if you're literally at a point where you've got no choice, I can learn it in a week because I've been given a week, you know, and I've got to know that tonight so I can learn it. Otherwise, I'm not going to, and I am not doing any color commentary. I'm just going literally more as a host, and I will let my co-caster do 90% of the commentary because he knows his shit, you know, and you're putting yourself forward completely off those bases, telling them that I'm only doing this because it's more to help you so that his production can go along, not purely because I know Rocket League or I know this, Clash Royale sort of game. And these guys coming on in, they talked as if they knew it, but really, what was that flippy thing he did? Like, excuse me, you mean a flip reset? Like, guys, come on. Like, and I said about, they watched the Last Worlds or whatever. There were flip resets in the Last Worlds finals. So clearly they didn't even watch that and do the most minuscule 30 minutes of research, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's probably true. There's also details of them viewbotting and shit, and there's all sorts of shady stuff. But I mean, if I just take a look at the Twitch channel, actually, if you do want to see how much of a shit show this really was, you can go to twitch.tv/UMG Gaming, and you can actually watch it because it's still up. It's the VOD is still up from that broadcast, which fucking entertains the shit out of me. I find that so funny. I'm just watching the gameplay. It already looks shit at the moment. I'm not going to go into detail with that, but back to the conversation. Go on.
I've got one bit, and the one bit I love the most is largely that isn't Keemstar an investor in this company? So he finally did a Rocket League event after all these. Well, now
I don't think he's an investor. I don't think he's an investor. I think he just partnered with UMG to run Fortnite Fridays and Minecraft Mondays. So I'm not 100% certain about that. But that's not for me to discuss. Again, I want to zone back in on the rule set part of thing because, again, it should be noted that a part of the justification for the rules from both Psyonix and the other guys from the community as well is that these are there to protect the IP. And it's what is the main talking point that has been out for this topic? Is the fact that UMG are a bunch of fucking idiots. Based into the point. Psyonix have not received any shit about this. Rocket League is still going strong. It was a blip on most people's radars, if that. And meanwhile, the only conversation coming up is obviously the fact that the rules are in place for this when, again, the reality is that they do more harm than good. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this as if these rules were not in place, if the community guidelines were not in place to stop tournaments like this, how much of an impact would it have realistically had on the Rocket League space to let this tournament run?
I mean, so the tournament running is to such a niche market as it is anyway. 8 trying to think, was it 8 American college teams?
Yes.
If I remember off the top of my head, yeah. $40,000 to them just straight away to me means that they're way too overfunded to be doing this. And their set was actually quite nice. So definitely for what they're trying to do, they have no idea about the landscape of Rocket League, because with $40,000, you can put on, you know, one of the biggest, like you can put on a major for that amount of money, put it that way. And it just means that they've got no idea about Rocket League, and it just comes down to quite largely that, yeah, this would have been a fuck up at any single state, no matter what they did, whether they probably did try to do it as a major, they would still fucked it up just because it's an incompetent company. The rules put in place by Psyonix over stuff, yes, is egregious and way too obnoxious, like, you know, limiting the scene. But even them, all we were asking for them, and more respectful, is to raise it up to, say, $20,000, to which this still would have been way over that limit, you know, double the limit anyway. And it just comes down to the rules aren't there to necessarily stop this, because this is just going to be appalling anyway, even if Psyonix did allow it, you know, just from the looks of it, because it is probably, you know, on paper a good event because they've got a marketing team that are pretty ace, apart from the guys that are announcing it online, clearly. But it just comes down to the fact of sometimes you just get shitty production companies that last a year, and sometimes you just get, you know, an event that is a scramble together because they've got to put something on to meet requirements set by investors, and a whole load of different factors that, you know, make up why events like this are put on. It's just... the harsh reality of esports is that you, and again, I go back to that, investors expecting you to put on a production, and that is one of the biggest realities of it, Jay, isn't it? Where they've just got to put on events, they've put numbers forward, and again, that would be why they're view buying, is because they're probably backed into a corner. They didn't put anything on, and thus they had to do this to just try and scrimp by, even if it is illegal practice.
I mean, I don't think it's a legal practice. Again, there's no criminal thing that says you can't run an esports tournament. Let's just be real here.
Well, no, I'm saying the view button is more that.
Oh, yeah, no,
it goes completely against...
I mean, the view botting, it can fuck right off. Again, but here's the thing, right? The main thing is that we've laughed UMG out of the scene. That's the only byproduct of this whole fucking thing, you know, even despite the rules coming into place. You know, there is nothing that Psyonix have actively done to shut this down other than put those rules in place. And again, like, people are missing the bigger picture if they're going to credit them for the for putting the rules in place to shut down a tournament like this. Like, we would have forced them out the door anyway as a community. So, you know, just like, take that into account next time you figure this out. And I've got a piece planned up for a later date, you know, for RLAfterShock.com, where I probably will be talking a bit more in detail about the community guidelines and what they actually mean, because I think a lot of people are focusing very heavily on the 5,000 prize pool cap and not the rest of the egregious shit that goes on outside of that. But that's another talking point for another day. For now, though, UMG, get fucked. Just fucking hell. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about ESPN, because this is a bit of a thing that goes on in esports, and it's very encouraging for esports as well. Not just Rocket League, just as a whole. Is this little thing from ESPN? They picked up the Rocket League Season 8 World Championship, broadcast it live on ESPN2, and got quite decent viewership. I haven't received the actual numbers just yet. I'm still looking into that. But the fact that Rocket League is on TV again is awesome. And as a whole, like, we've got like such a big sort of influx of, you know, like, sports players and sports people playing video games, and it's all being broadcast live on TV because there's nothing else to do, because all the sports tournaments have been fucking cancelled. So we're in a really good spot right now when it comes to esports. And again, not just Rocket League, but on the whole, everything is looking pretty Gucci. And I'm very excited to see what this means for the future, essentially, because there's an opportunity for more tournaments and teams and more esports to get themselves a spot on TV.
Yeah, and you look at that across the whole, like, I know the biggest push at the moment has been the sim racing stuff, because a lot of, like, say, Formula One is behind it. IndyCar from America has got their own series, and that's like quite an easy transition because essentially it's the same sport, you know, just done virtually. Whereas trying to get people to now look at stuff that's a little bit different, and you can see there was a lot of people within the comments just shouting out, like, from ESPN when they announced this, like, oh, why weren't you doing FIFA and Madden, you know, to fill that time? Well, again, they're not capably set up at the same level, you know, as even what Rocket League is. I mean, FIFA's a little bit better, but when it comes around to this, when you've got literally a replay which Silence can send on over at brilliant quality to ESPN and it's hype as fuck, yeah, they're going to put that on, and it fits into one of their 1 hour, you know, slots. Yeah. And it's fantastic seeing, of course, Rocket League as a gateway game into the world of esports is a fantastic one because it's entirely in fantasy, as it's cars playing football, but the key element is that football, and it's very easy to just pick up and understand. So for me, it's nice to see ESPN doing this, and yeah, hopefully it's the start of good things to come, as, you know, hopefully we can see them pick up. You'd probably get more regionals and that rather than league play coming on through for them because they've got so many sports they want to show. But, you know, the regional finals or semi-finals and finals, playoffs maybe getting thrown on into that sort of environment would be fantastic to see, as it is just the growth of esports and finally getting the more public recognition that it needs. Like, I don't know about you, Jay, but like it makes me laugh a little bit because I've been watching some TV shows and that, like, for me, cooking shows currently going on. I fucking love cooking shows for everyone at home.
Oh, no, mate, nothing can beat Hell's Kitchen, right? That fucking show is awesome.
No, I'm talking about stuff like fucking Jamie Oliver this morning, and it feels
well,
weird.
You're fucking boring. Holy shit.
No, I love that. I love Sunday morning kitchen, Sunday morning breakfast, sorry, and all of that sort of shit. But what I'm saying, it's like where they're having to do that from home at the moment, you've got all these like guys going out on national television and they're filming it off of their iPhones, and it just makes me like laugh a little bit on the inside that, you know, you could, and this is going out to TV, you could see a whole sort of change in broadcasting and such, as equipment that is available to use from home is getting so much better, and people are starting to wise up to, especially now within this climate, that video games aren't just, you know, toys, you know? And it's quite interesting to see how this world mentality is changing at the moment from everyone being stuck indoors. And Rocket League for me needs to jump on in this. I want to see straight up on ESPN or another you know, American sport network, whatever, the spring series pop up on that. I want SandRock to be pushing this so fucking hard, because this is, for me anyway, a clear 2-month window they've got right now to really make or break Rocket League, considering that the end of last year, Jay, we were like, 2020 has got to be make or break for them, otherwise it will literally be break, you know? And now I mean, on that note, we've got... Go on.
So on that note, I mean, SandRock have already announced that the NA Spring Series, not the EU one, of course, but the NA Spring Series finals will be broadcast on ESPN. Yep. So we've got that much at least. They've got some content syndication. Obviously, ESPN scrambling to get everything that they can out the door. So this is obviously the big thing to go to. And outside of the small little people that, you know, keep going on about this is not a sports shit, which has just been done to death for the past 3 years, the general feedback on ESPN has actually been really positive towards Rocket League. I mean, you know, at that point, you know, we've solidified ourselves, because ESPN, you know, they've got these rights for cheap. You know, they can produce esports for cheaper than they can produce regular sports, because it doesn't require the same amount of manpower or equipment outside of, you know, PC hardware and such. So, you know, for them, obviously, this is a great way in for the future investment of esports as a whole. And this will show us exactly who's serious about esports on everything, because right now we are in the dominant space. And right now, if this continues going on for as long as we think it's going to go on for the next like month or two or so, then all the esports tournaments that we're producing right now has a perfect opportunity to get on TV, perfect opportunity to get in front of the mainstream esports, mainstream audience, I should say. And for ESPN, obviously, like, again, the feedback has been mostly positive. And yeah, there's nothing but positives for this one. You know, I'm really happy. I'm really excited as well, because like, of all the industries that could go under, and esports will take a hit because of coronavirus, but at the end of the day, I also feel like we're going to be the ones that come out on top as the kings of the mountain, I feel like, with stuff like this going on, you know?
So my only caveat to this all, and it does come down to the audience that is going to largely be watching ESPN and all of that, is that for them, a big ploy that is going to get a lot of casual viewers on side is seeing crowds, is seeing that Worlds environment instead of just online, because crowds hype up. You know, when you ever watch the world sort of scenario of any esport where there is a crowd there, and of course you know that's the pinnacle of that game, it makes it so much more interesting to watch. And so ESPN, I am a little bit worried about the reception, because I think it will be worse when it comes around the spring series, but you've still got to take that time and know that this is still better than fucking nothing. And then when it comes around to, after all this happens, let's say next season when it comes around, let's make sure that we get the whole of the championship live on, you know, ESPN, whatever their internet one is. I want to say it's ESPN 3 is their streamed over the internet one, and cable, like some advanced internet cable box, whatever they do in America, because I don't follow any of that
this will
sort
end
of
up being the start, I think, more than anything else. You know, this will be the beginning of the opportunities that open up for Rocket League on ESPN and on other TV networks as well. You know, I was seeing a couple stints in the past, and again, I feel like this will start to reinstall confidence, because at the end of the day, this will be the only thing that we'll have to go off of. And yeah, we won't have the same sort of grandeur as a live event. But again, if companies are willing to take a risk on us now, given the fact that all the other stuff has fallen through, then I think that in terms of future investment, we should be able to see some world championships in some big lands go up on ESPN.
So, and one big thing Psyonix now has to do is not just look to American companies like ESPN, but selling this globally. Go to Sky or BT in the UK, Sky down in Australia, and that, where they've got their own ones. You know, Germany, I can't fucking remember for Germany. I know Spain is stuff like Canal and all of that sort of shit. But, you know, try and get this esport, especially like when you got Worlds Season 8 there ready to go. Try and get this out to as many sort of countries as you can. Not just single focus on America alone. I know it's easier to do, but this is going to be the make or break, especially when you can send the finals of, you know, let's just say LPL's Oceanic finals that they did in a studio environment as well last season, and put that again on to the Oceanic scenes. I know LPL has the broadcasting rights to that, but try and like push them to do that in this current climate, because they've got to be looking themselves, because we know OCE as well as Sam are going to be on the main Rocket League Twitch channel to just basically try and like push more viewers over to that and branch out globally.
Well, on that note, on that note, the situation with LPL is that they've already sold a couple of broadcasting rights on TV in the past. So, like, it's the perfect avenue to get them to sell even more. And, although again, the situation won't be quite as comfortable for their current season. Previous seasons they're there for them as well. I know that Gfinity, although they don't operate in OCE anymore, they could probably still reach out to some of their contacts out there and possibly sell the Elite Series there as well. Some other Rocket League things that they've done there, even though again that's very outdated and not quite representative of what Rocket League is now, but also the old OC sort of like championship stuff that they did for RLCS. All these things are still possible. It was the case of Psyonix allowing that to go through. And again, I feel like the syndication as well to get it out into Europe, and especially, obviously, we've got the World Championships that could go out on likes of BT Sport, who right now are really in a fucking hell. Like, trust me when I say this. I know people from BT Sport. They are not having a good fucking time over there. So you want to make some easy money, sell the rights to BT Sport. And there you go. Get Rocket League on TV in the UK, and then I can tell everyone to kiss my ass when they see my face on stream, on the screen, in the crowd, as we please cheer for NRG. Anyway, that's it for the news. That's it for the ESPN thing. Let's move on to the mailbag. Of course, we still have our mailbag channels in the Discord, which is in the show notes and video descriptions of every single episode of the podcast. Click that link. Go follow us into our little community, which is now being constantly updated with every single piece of discussion now. All the news features are now posted automatically in the newsfeed channel. And below that newsfeed channel is the mailbag channel, where again you can send questions, topics, and other suggestions for us here to discuss. And chances are we'll answer it live on an episode of RLAfterShock. We've got 2 mailbag questions for us this week.
Cast the focused.
Yeah, both of them are actually, which is quite fun. The first one is mostly for me, but I guess you can also chime in for this one, Bacon. It comes in from Jens, which is quite a fun one. And I apologize to anyone who gets offended by my swearing, but if you've been listening to the show for this long and you have been offended by my swearing, then I assume we're just going to give you more value for content in that respect. But Jens asks... Do
we now have to list this as NSFW because swearing, Jay? Like, I mean, I've just been thinking
I've already got them the mature audiences filter set by default to all platforms, unless it's not worked, in which case I've got to go through and manually add it. But that's the bottom line. At the end of the day, we are not for kids sort of podcast. And this question, we're an unfiltered podcast, and this question proves us why. Jens asks, while listening to RLAfterShock, I noticed that fucking is your fucking favorite word, and you fucking use it for fucking everything. I have no fucking problems with that at all, but I can imagine some fucking tournament organisers won't like it on broadcast. How do you handle that? And the first thing I'll say is, fuck everybody. No, I'm kidding. No. Right, so the thing about this podcast is that it is not representative of what I would usually do on an official broadcast. That is the truth of the matter right here. Right? I think it's safe to say that this show is not designed for all audiences, and it's intentionally like that because this is more like the down the pub, drinking, just sort of chatting about Rocket League and giving some sort of discussion points. And yeah, it's a lot more in depth and professional, like from an analytical perspective. But from a conversation perspective, you know, this is the me that you see right now is the me that you get in real life if you're down the pub, right? You know, like words don't have any sort of impact down the pub for me, right? They don't have any, you know, and I've grown up in an environment where, you know, the least of my worries was whether someone was saying something that offended me at the end of the day. Like, you know, words don't mean anything. So when I say stuff like fuck, shit, and, you know, and all the regular sort of like swear words, it's just kind of it's natural to me because that's how I would act in a casual environment, you know, and that's the case. If you ever meet me in real life, I'll be speaking the exact same sort of way. The one thing I don't do, though, is do that on a live broadcast because this is my fucking platform. I will do whatever the fuck I like with it. If I go to your platform, that's not on for me to start doing whatever I like. You know, that's just not the case, you know, and that proves in my track record because if you go through all of the rival series broadcasts from the B stream, the worst thing you'll hear me say is a 420 joke. Like, that's it.
And even then, you've been told off for that.
And even then, I've been told off for that, and I've never done it again since. At least on rival series broadcasts. I personally don't think it's that much of a bad thing. You know, like, come on.
It's a meme, and
it's a meme. It's a meme. It's a joke.
It's not obvious.
And I draw attention to other numbers as well. It's not like I only focus in on the 420 thing only. Like, you know, there's 316 Stone Cold, 1 minute 1 second, 101 Dalmatians. You know, 322. Oh god, they're throwing. You know, all these different numbers that you can sort of pull from in the Rocket League timer. And it's just funny, you know, at the end of the day, like 420 is just another one of those things because at the end of the day, like, you know, Vape Nation, 420, all that sort of shit feeds into internet culture. But you'll never hear me say a swear word. That is going too far on a broadcast. I can think of 3 occasions where I've sworn on an official broadcast. The first one was for Belong Arenas, which was so subtle that I didn't even notice it until I was told like 5 minutes later when the broadcast had ended. You remember this, Bacon, because you were there, and I was fucking just in a state when I was told about it. I've got it on camera somewhere, just when Ben's in my ear just saying, you actually did swear on stream. I'm like, no, what have I done?
I don't think I even picked up on it at the time as well until we look back, because it was just one of those things. It was hype.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just slipped out, right? And it rarely ever happens because I'm usually pretty decently controlled. And even then, apparently I caught it under my breath. So that's even more credence to the point that I have some self-control. The second time that I did was on my own personal channel for my own personal Twitch channel for a UK tournament that was so small that the clip of it doesn't exist anymore. The VOD of it never got clipped. The VOD of it is long gone. The third third time was back in 2016, where I was casting for WESG, and I swore intentionally because the team that was playing was Virtus Pro, and they was so bad that the Twitch chat were even like, this caster should swear more because we agree with him, right? Those are the 3 occasions in my 5-year history where I've sworn on a broadcast, one of which shouldn't even count because it was my own channel, okay? That's it. So realistically, 2 times. So I hold myself to a higher standard when I'm on a broadcast. But this shit right here, this is just a casual sort of chat, you know? We're not taking ourselves hyper seriously. If I was in a studio, you know, even to the point where this podcast on the video version, we're not even doing our video stuff because we can't facilitate the situation for people to record us or to live stream us onto Twitch. If we were in a studio or some shit, then yeah, we'd take ourselves a little bit more seriously. I probably wouldn't be swearing as much, but the truth of the matter is that this is a completely different environment. And if you want proof to that, just take a look at my show reels, take a look at my portfolio. You know, it's all there on YouTube. There's a big playlist on my channel that shows off my best moments. All that's there. You can watch through and you can see that there's nothing like that on an official broadcast from me.
It's just as simple as for every single cast there is, like this sort of case of the podcast is us just unfiltered how we are normally. Like if you talk to us at LAN, it's the exact same. But as soon as you get on a live broadcast, even if it's online, in the studio, whatever, we suddenly enter PG mode. And Jay, we value ourselves upon not changing our thoughts or opinion. It's just changing the way not swearing. It's just how you word it, exactly. And even then, like when we go into a studio environment, whatever, we try and be more eloquent with how we word stuff, and think about all that sort of jazz. But yeah, as soon as you go into that, you can't, because that's part of being a professional. You've got to expect that it is PG or E for everyone, that sort of environment, and that's absolutely fine. Like you said, personally, stuff like the 420 Blaze It, like I'm there going, you don't point out the number, but you hit like and they get a blazing goal, as the second one. So it's like a subtle hint. Yes, we know the meme, we know the joke, but we're not going to make it so obvious that your mum could pick up on it. That's pretty much what you want to go for there,
I mean, even then, I still think it's just a little funny fucking nod. But even Twitch chat gets the 420 Blaze It thing, so that's another thing anyway. But the bottom line is, like, if you want even more proof, I should also note that I was trained in live TV and I was trained in live radio, so I know what the broadcast standard is and I know what I should and shouldn't say. And this is the case that I have a Cert HE, I have a level 3 diploma. I have all these things in the arts of in the media arts that shows that I know exactly what I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not an amateur. I'm a professional, and this is the case that this is a little supplementary material for me to be, a bit more casual than a professional here. But there you go. That's your question answered, Jens. And if you ever want to know anything more about that, then again, my DMs are open, so you can hit me up. Anyone can hit me up. Any tournament organizer, any fan. That's just the rules that I have in place here. If you want to talk to me, then you can talk about this stuff, and we can hash it out. We can hash it all out about, and hopefully with a lot of swearing for now, because Lord forbid I can't do it in a public environment. Anyways, let's move on. John, aka Always, asks another question related to casting. He asks, when talking to Shogun on stream, he said he wasn't as proud mechanically of his Season 5 finals cast compared to the work done in DreamHack Pro Circuit in Season 8 finals, partially down to his casting being more infrequent in 2019. Which begs the question, as casters yourselves, how do you self-criticize or reflect on your own casting? Is there anything you look out for in particular, like errors in knowledge, mispronunciation, miscalls, tone, or other aspects that talking about Carball the general public probably isn't aware of? And I'll just say off the bat right now, I watch every one of my VODs back. Every single one. If you ever wonder why I can't play games, it's because I'm watching VODs. So I'm listening to my casting thinking, where did I fuck up? What did I do? And they usually have a lot of different things. I have a notepad. I used to have a notepad where I just noted down every single thing. I just read over it at night just to remember I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't do it like this. I should slow down a little bit. I probably am going a bit too hype in these areas. I'm probably going a little bit under hype in these other areas. I should pay attention more. I should do this. I should do that. As an individual basis, I watch every single VOD, and I watch other VODs as well, and I try to pinpoint what other casters are doing right. And and from my research in that respect, yeah, Shogun is absolutely right. His season 5 finals, mechanically speaking, was a bit of a clusterfuck up until This Is Rocket League. Like, you have to listen back and just listen back to what you've heard from other casters and the way they link like phrases and sentences together, and you watch that season 5 finals and you realize that Shogun was tripping up quite a lot, at the end of the day. So like, he has every right to be not proud of his season 5 finals.
But
and
the circumstances
that's the case
there was because it was just so hype. It was so much energy that you could feel he was just completely running on adrenaline. Like, you're shattered by that point. At the end of the day.
Shogun was also caught off guard, I think, with the whole last second goal thing, because there were like 2 points in that cast where it should have hit the floor and it didn't. So like, Shogun, obviously in 2 years' time, he's come a long way since that point. I think if we redid those season 5 finals with Shogun as he is right now, then it would be a completely different cast and it would be a completely different setup, and it would be done much better than it was done back in London. Doesn't take away from the fact that the moment was perfectly placed and everything with This Is Rocket League. But, I think that probably speaks more to the power of Shogun's casting, considering that the fact that call was scuffed and it still is the most iconic call in the whole scene,
Yeah, and the way you got to look back to it is those days when he was with Carpet as well. He was having to do both the play-by-play and analysis together, with Carpet just doing more fun, light-hearted color to it, Jay? So that is a star which, one, you don't even see nowadays as a thing, and two, it's just got to be the most bewildering casting style that I can think of. It was great fun, and you can see they enjoyed it, but one that I think has got to be so hard to rack your brain around,
Yeah, I can see that, but and obviously I'm talking about my personal way of how I adjust and how I do things. What about you, Bacon? What do you do to improve casting?
Quite often, like a Sunday morning, I'll rewatch random VODs. So I unfortunately don't have time to watch every single VOD, but I watch a lot of other casters, of course, because you got to keep up to date with the scene. But I'll go through every single VOD which I think was a bad cast. I'll rewatch. Out of my good ones, I'll make sure to just randomly dip in, so I'm not selecting that VOD. I'm purely going in and I'm being hypercritical on it. So that's just because of time constraints. Otherwise, you can feel as well when you're doing bad and the cast doesn't go well. For me, I can definitely feel like, Jay, you'll notice as well, I completely, throughout the time before casting with you, like, if I'm not casting with you, I'm a play-by-play caster, aren't I, near enough?
Yeah.
And so when I can take the example of last year from September up until Christmas, where we were getting fuck tons of work. Yeah. I got so incredibly burnt out, didn't I, with my color casting, that by the time it rolled around to December, I was done and I didn't want to do anything. January, I didn't do anything. I purely went away to the board and sort of redid how I want to do casting, and hence why. And we were talking about this little bit last week about how the whole nowadays is my color casting. I'll make sure to bring up stuff that happened 30 seconds ago, and I want to give, instead of just analysis. Sorry,
professional Rocket League caster, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm a little tongue-tied. I really need a glass of water right now. I'm not going to lie. Instead, just give an analysis of what was on screen at that point, but just give the whole micromanagement and the little nuances of Rocket League, because I don't see any other caster that does that, where they can pick out that this little thing that happened, 20 seconds ago had little rippling effects into the goal that happened right there. And quite often it does, like, it's quite easy to call out a double commit that might have happened 10 seconds ago. But what about one that happened 30 seconds ago really made the rotations wonky, which created that little gap in defense that meant that the shot was completely on an open net, And for me, that was me going away and going, okay, why isn't this being done by any caster? And it is purely coming down to everyone having to look at it from a director cam standing point, but you can still see little things and take note of that throughout a cast. And for me, knowing that I'm trying to actively look for stuff, it's more engaging for me to cast and makes it much more enjoyable, because a part of getting burnt out is also that you just don't want to do that stuff, and I can definitely feel like that happens with play-by-play definitely as well, doesn't it? But I feel like for color casting, it is so much more obvious because play-by-play, you can fake
with play-by-play, you can just shout at the top of your lungs and then you can get the point across, and it doesn't matter how good the casting is, so long as you can get that hype, you can probably fool most of the audience. I feel like, like there was a cast I had in CSGO back in January. It was actually, I remember it very vividly because it was one of my worst ones. I fucking hated it to bits. It was Cloud9 versus Complexity at Katowice, the Katowice qualifiers, and I remember that one because I was so fucking bad, but because it was such a good match, because I had some really good like clip moments where I was just like, oh my god, it's so good, it's amazing. The audience generally reacted pretty positively to it. There were a couple of people that picked out the fact that it was a shit cast, and then well played to them because they were absolutely right. It was a shit fucking match. It was a shit cast. But you can get away with it if you know how to dress it up right as a play-by-play. With the color casting, it's not quite the same because if you say something that's objectively wrong, then everyone is on your back for it. It's simple as that.
Straight off that, we know that mid-cast if it's not going well. And Jay, our way to do that is quite often like I'm very open and honest with you, aren't I? And I go, we need to be conversational. We need to talk continuously because I cannot analyze anything. I'm just not in a mindset.
Yeah, there was actually a moment. There was a moment. Was it this season in Rival Series B stream or last season?
I think so, yeah.
It must have been this season or so, where like we had a cast on the B stream, and after the first game, I turned to Bacon. We turned to each other and was like, "This is not fucking working, Bacon. It's going fucking horribly. We need to make these adjustments." And it was like a case of like, I think you need to focus less on play-by-play. And then you turned to me and said, "You need to give me more points to be conversational about." And we fixed it in the second series. It went far better, and we've been on a roll ever since. This is after, and there are certain
you get an off day.
Yeah, you get off days, you get off periods. There are maybe a couple of weeks where you're just not working together, and then you like hit your stride back and you continue for a few months. Maybe there could be moments of a few months where you're not working that well together, and it takes like this sort of like a really bad moment of a cast for you to turn around and be like, well, you got to change some shit, because sometimes I don't even notice it. Sometimes we don't even figure it out until we actually until
what were we doing?
Yeah, we look into a VOD because that's the key thing, right? VOD review is the most valuable thing that you can use as a caster to improve your casting, because when you're there in the moment, you don't feel the same issues that everybody else is feeling. But if you go back later from a fresh perspective, from a fresh mindset, not really having to focus on the next big moment, you can figure out, okay, this is where we fucked up. And there was a revelation moment where we had to sort of do that. We were forced into doing that because we had to figure it out. Otherwise, we were just going to be shit casters essentially. So as a duo, it's very important. And that's the reason why we stress the importance of duos, because if you're chopping and changing your partner every week or so, then there's no way you can build synergy. There's no way that you can improve that easily. That's the reason why me and Bacon are heralded as some of the best casters in the EU. Not because we're good, it's because we've been working on ourselves for fucking ages. Of course, a part of it is the fact that we are good, but that good only came from the fact that we were busting our asses trying to make us good from the outset, essentially. And not as individual casters, but as a dynamic duo, essentially.
And you got to think this, the idea of putting casters together largely came about. Can you remember I made the group and it was like, we need to do this because we EU casters, for anyone at home, are super friendly towards each other but very fucking competitive, where we want to push each other by being not only by saying me and Jay being our best means Jam, our elite crafters have to be their best as well. And it's and we'll continuously critique each other. We haven't done a group sort of caster practice session for a good while because just time isn't there. I mean, it is there at the moment again, but then I've been doing a lot of fucking stuff with friends online and that, because you've got the opportunity now.
I signed up to new CSGO tournaments because now that everything's going online, all the online TOs are suddenly hiring again, which is fantastic for me,
Exactly. So it's a little bit of a wonky period right now because as casters, it's good because we've got tons of work coming on in, but we know that work is very short term whilst this coronavirus stuff is, then you got to re-hustle once everything goes back to land. But necessarily. It just comes down to you've got to have that mental mindset to be able to do that. And why we always, like, the biggest reason why we said back with RLCS was, why the fuck are they changing up their casters each and every week? Because you can see everyone's really awkward, doesn't know how to work with each other. Because even if you don't work with each other for, say, a month or two, it takes 1 or 2 series before you can go, oh, okay, yeah, this is us clicking and getting used to each other again. But in Rocket League, you get traditionally 2 series, especially with the RLCS, and that is your work for the day done. So you haven't had time to bed in and get used to each other. And that then goes on to the opposite end of, you know, when a lot of the bubble scene casts and that, where you've got 5 series in one night, you get shattered by the end of it. So you know not to put all your energy on straight away into the first games, and that generally you start to pick up your rhythm by about the 3rd anyway, so that you've got to try and maintain yourself. Otherwise, let's just take the Blonde cast last week, Jay. We were absolutely knackered after doing 7 series.
To be fair though, I also had 2 hours sleep that night, so you know I take full responsibility for being an absolute shitter in that respect. But you know,
but that's what I'm sort of talking about. When we're saying RLCS should be the pinnacle, and they're not actively striving to make it the pinnacle. And it really bewilders me when, you know, the community scene has to bust their balls to near enough do stuff like that, like doing 7 series in a day throughout qualifiers, whatever. And some of the times they're doing that for free because, you know, it's on the lower end of things. And then when the very top end has got such a finite, by the book way of being able to do things, and then not actively trying to polish everything up so that it is the best, I just do not get it. And that's why, like I said, you've got to strive for the best, and that's what casters should be doing and are doing. Most of the time with the RLCS thing, I reckon that isn't by the casters' design to swap themselves up.
Oh no, that absolutely not.
That could have just been the crew for that season accepting that it was a mistake. But you can see from this season, where they do have those solid caster duos, that they were using last season to find them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that, you know, they even still made a couple of fuck-ups here and there, because there were points where, Johnny Boy was casting with other guys, and they still have this stupid pairing of Achieves and Turtle, which just doesn't work, you know? There are still some issues to be resolved, but, I think that once we decide, look, these are the guys that need to work together, and then have those be permanent duos throughout the entire, you know, season, then just leave it at that. And if someone wants to swap, it's cool. You can do that. Then that's the point of having a duo, you know? There's a reason why, you know, there's a reason why we're not called ketchup and mustard, for fuck's sake, because we don't go together forever. You know, we're not glued at the hip, because you know, if something's not working with bacon, it's fine. I can go try something out with crafters and see if I can, you know, make a duo there. If the relationship breaks down that far, you know, I don't think it will by any stretch of the imagination, because I think we've got a good thing going right now. But you know, the future's yet to be told. We don't know what's going to happen. And at that point, it's look,
we're professional enough to know, if it's not working, to just go, don't get salty at each other, don't get angry, just go, we're better off.
We're men, you know, we're not fucking children. Unlike most of the scene, but you know, I digress.
And that's purely because it's your career. You've got to take that stance on it.
But there you go. That's our thoughts on casting, improving to cast. Our thoughts to also link in the RLCS casters, because fuck it, why not? And thank you, John and Jens, for your questions. Once again, if you do want to get involved in the show and ask us a mailbag question, it's in the Discord, in the show notes, and the video description. Send us some questions, send us some topics, send us some talking points, and chances are we'll discuss them live or recorded on an episode of RLAfterShock going forward. Now, we've got 2 new things we want to do here. We've got to do our tournament roundup for the bubble scene, because this is going to have to become a recurring thing as we go on throughout the rest of the off-season, because there is only 1 spring series, and that's as far as we know what's going to go happening. So we're going to talk about the Rocket Baguette and other tournament organizer Rising Stars leagues, essentially. The Star League in particular is the focus of our discussion today. After that, we're going to move on and talk about the promotion playoffs. We're going to do our quick preview of that promotion tournament. But we'll start with the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars. Obviously, Rocket Baguette doing the French region of the Rising Stars Star League. And what we're going to do, by the way, is we're going to run through each of the different TOs, and we're going to run through each of the different regions, and you know, give you sort of a recap of the results so far. We're not going to go in depth and saying, hey, this team beat this team, blah 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 blah, because there's a lot of results. So we're just going to sort of cover it in broad strokes and bring up some talking points about each of the teams, some of whom you might recognize, some of whom you won't. But regardless, we're going to start with Rocket Baguette. Baguette, and their Star League Blue consisted of Baguette squad, Baguette squad. Don't get those two confused. That's very, very different. Although I have to say, fuck this team for making it, so stupidly similar to the point where I genuinely had to double take. I had to double take and figure out, hold on, this is not two teams like duplicated at the same time. But they've also got Yasuke Esports Club, Crystal Gaming Black, Lausanne Esports, Papega Squad, Space Knights, and Zolo Chine, I think is how you say that. I have no fucking idea.
No idea. I don't speak Chinese.
Those are your teams that are currently sitting in the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars Blue at the moment. I have realised that some of the matches have also been filled out as of when I updated this document, Bacon. So I'm going to kind of read off some slightly different standings for you. Right now, secured in position number 1 is the Space Knights. They are through to the Rocket Baguette Star League finals. That team of Gas Power leading that particular squad. Baguette squad are currently in second at the moment, with Zolo Chine over in third. Baguette squad still contesting for one of those 2nd through 4th positions, not yet confirmed to stay in Star League for Season 6. And Lausanne are confirmed at this point. They have no way to drop in. They have no way to promote. Crystal Gaming at 6th position. They are locked in to be going to the promotion of playoffs. Yasuke Esports Clubs currently at 0-6, and Papega Squad are currently fighting to avoid the auto-relegation spot at the bottom end of that table. So those are your current results in Rising Stars or Star League Blue. In Rocket Baguette Star League Red, we have the teams of Solari, Glory for Builders, Prophecy Esports, not to be confused with Prophecy, the team from the Elite Series. That's a completely different organization. Jimapel Fricandel. This is going to be one of the issues talking about all these different regions. The fact that they're just going to put up some French shit that I don't know how to say. MGA Esports, Servette Geneva, Team Oplon and Epsilon all competing in their stance. And they just finished, I think, all their matches except for one. And that kind of leads us to being in this situation where we have currently all the confirmed teams. Solari, Epsilon and Servette currently in 1st through 3rd. They're confirmed for the finals. Glory for Builders and Jimapel are in 4th and 5th. 6th and 7th sees Prophecy and MGA fighting for their chances in promotion playoffs. And the relegation team will be Oplon going at 1-6 with -3 on the game difference compared to MGA. So that's Rocket Baguette. Let's talk about the Baguette squad, I think. They had a pretty decent disaster season over in the rival series, but they're still holding their own here in the bubble scene. I mean, I think there's still a lot of credence in that lineup. There's still a pretty decent set of talents, and they're proving it right here by taking almost taking their spot. There's a very high chance that they will take their spot in the in the playoffs,
So the one thing I've got to look at, I'm just going to say between red and blue, Baguette Squad is the only rival series team in their group there. Let's just put that out there. And it shows that sort of caliber and how it's more understandable how Baguette Squad stepped back this season as they're fighting with bubble scene teams. And don't get me wrong, good players like you've got with Baguette Squad, unknown previously on the Baguette Squad side, maybe and Forsey, Space Knights, who were an interesting one and maybe even in the run-ins to maybe slip one of those playing spots last season, Gaspar Radson Zen. And let's take a look at Zolu Taching, who you might know some of these players as Eversax, Ariza, and Sebadam. So good players nonetheless, just ones that have sort of fallen back into the bubble scene, but it shows that Baguette Squad aren't up to the caliber, like up to the level they were last season, or at least the bubble scene has caught up with them, and they're doing good. But realistically, you can see that I think they're lucky with their group this season, because you look over to isn't it red, the other side, and Solari, Epsilon and Servette Geneva for me were like a class above the rest. And it's an interesting one, especially Solari. They went undefeated throughout the season there. And this to me just shows that Baguette Squad are naturally at home, and again, this is a benefit to the other team because this is the French league, of course, so the other teams will know them, and it just shows that Baguette Squad have got a lot of work to do. But luckily for them, there is a lot of French talent which they can dip into to maybe make that Baguette Squad resurgence next season, because we do expect this team to probably make a few changes.
I mean, I agree that I think the Baguette Squad could have probably would have gone out if they were seeded into red. I think that for the most part the seeding was pretty respectable, obviously, because Baguette Squad didn't have the greatest of seasons. Servette Geneva did finish above them, so obviously they're doing all right in that red position, just kind of taking the last of the 3 spots there from league play. I did want to talk about the future for Baguette squad though, because while we have got a bit more of a basis going on here with the Star League and with the Rising Star system as a whole, is this an opportunity for this team to stick together and continue to contest at the top end of the bubble scene right now? Like, you know, I know you mentioned that they're probably going to make changes. I know that they made changes going in from last season's relegation to the play-ins again. But you know, is the core of this team still up to caliber and up to par for rival series level?
I think that, considering their performance from this season, it is shown as yes. They're just missing that one little inkling. And if you've ever seen some of the games from here, like, they feel as one of the best teams within their group. They're currently only sitting second now because they've still got one more game to play. They've got to face off against their biggest rival, actually, Zolu Chiching, which is Sebadam and ExVertex's team. So that will be near enough. Whoever wins out of that one, I do believe, will move on to be in the top of the group. So
I mean, you say that though. You say that, and actually, Space Knights are. I mean, I guess currently they're secure because they finished up all their games and they're currently in a decent spot. But Space Knights, like, this is a team that I kind of wanted to talk about in a bit more depth because, like, Gas Power is the only player that I really recognize from these guys, and yet they've still gone 6-1. The only team that they've lost to, if I can track down their position here, was actually Baguette squad of all teams. You know, of all the squads, they've even beaten out the Baguette squad. You know, like, this is quite an impressive sort of showing from a team that, for the most part, are made up of players that I'm not too familiar with. You know, I know who Gas Power is, but Radisson and Zen and Rocket Bass, I don't know who they are. So
it's more Radisson and Zen that you want to look at there.
Radisson and Zen. Okay. Again, well, talk me a bit more about these players, because again, I'm not too familiar with these guys. I'm sure that most of the audience aren't too familiar either. So, like, educate me, Bacon. What is so special about this team that have put them into a spot into the play-ins already?
So the weirdest thing that goes on within the French region is just how Gas Power can make teams. Like, I'm not going to call him RLRS level at all, because I realistically don't think he is. But he is just the biggest facilitator of bringing through younger French players and really propelling them to the point of, naturally he holds the mental game of the team, but he does not hold the mechanical game at all. And it's quite cool to see that. And realistically, I think he could later down the line make a great captain of a French team if that was to happen. Not captain, sorry, a coach. Sorry, because the way that he formulates teams and his constant results on top of just how his teams mentally play, like, it feels very much akin to how Baguette squad play, and it's just missing that one little inkling point. And you look towards this team, Zen right now is my one to really watch out for within the French scene, is maybe one of those next up and coming players akin to the three lads of Solari. I think he could maybe break on into one of those unexpected bubble teams making a run for play-ins next season. Who knows? Maybe he gets picked up by the Baguettes and replaces. And I always look at that Baguette squad team and go, Yukis, Swoop, and Rizal. Who do you replace on there? Because they're three fantastic players and they just gel together. You couldn't imagine them splitting up. But you look towards the other teams there, like Zolu, Tiching, and there's Cheng, I don't know his name. ExVertex, Horizon, Sebdam. That is a solid old guard bubble team, you know. So it's understandable why they're there. But Pepega squad, I've got no idea. I know because I'm Matt, but that's it out of the squad. Yazuki, I know Otter a little bit, and Slyax, but I don't know Poseidas. Again, I can't speak French. So it's interesting for me, largely with what Rocket Baguette are doing here, because this is like the pinnacle, or at least of their regional teams, and you don't know some of the French players, and you're just like, damn, France has some caliber, because you can rank like Baguette squad, you know their level against the whole rest of Europe, and they're not the top of their division. That's crazy, you know?
I mean,
and it shows
here's my thing.
France is always going to have a little bit like we got the surge of the Spanish teams this season. France is always going to have like two teams that are clearly RORS caliber, and that is purely national squads.
Here's my thing with this, actually, is that I kind of see this as the start of sort of like, you know, a teams and players' potential to make it into the top end level of the bubble scene, you know? Like, for me, if you took the Rising Stars format
and just continuous, mate. That's always been it for Rocket League. France is stacked, yo.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, because this is the thing, right? You know, like you mentioned sort of the players that you don't see, and it's like, yeah, they've got some respectable, very good elements here from Switzerland and from France across the entire Star League. But I feel like, you know, with the format and the way that it works here, because they've got the Rising Stars even below this, which isn't even listed on Wikipedia. You got to do some real good fucking digging to try and find those guys, you know. So like, I feel like with the whole Superstar, with the Superstar League also coming up for all the players that make their way in from the regional sort of playoffs, like you've got the makings of a system that you could just stick below RLRS and have have a promotion system right there. Like Psyonix, I don't know what you're doing.
We've been asking for. That is it.
Like Psyonix, I don't know what you're doing, but just like fucking give Rocket Baguette a little bit of funding and give them sort of like the necessary sort of like things and take a little bit of control of Superstar League perhaps. But just this is your new promotion system right here. Like fuck play-ins, do this, right? This is amazing. And I absolutely love it because you say, you know, like some of the players that you see here are just not really of massive caliber right now, but there's an opportunity I could see them presenting, especially if they can stay in this, you know, in this sort of like. In this league and in the Rising Stars system as a whole. But to jump away from blue back to red for a moment, obviously we're talking about Servette Geneva for our last little topic about the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars, because they're sort of like the last sort of team that we're chasing up. I mean, it's expected that Solari would make it in. Epsilon I wanted to give a little bit more credence to because they've been pretty respectable in the bubble scene, sort of weeklies and Rising Cups and such. But Servette Geneva, obviously, very similar story to Baguette Squad. They had a disaster season in the rival series. They have now, I think, officially confirmed that Yagi is off the team, and they've now got Sizen in for TCS, but I'm not sure about their current system in
They'll be bringing them in for the finals.
I think I'm not 100% certain on that front. I'll have to keep my eyes on how things are going to work for them, but I'm going to keep my eyes on that broadcast regardless, because I want to see how Sizen does in the international stage, because Servette Geneva, they're making some moves. They were able to secure their top 3, so going into the regional play-ins, there's an opportunity for them to hold their own here, Bacon. So let's talk a bit about Servette Geneva. What do we fancy out of this team? What are we expecting?
So for me right now, I look at the other 3 teams that are qualified for the finals, and Solari, we know how good they are, Jay. Like, I mean, they're coming through to the promotion playoffs this coming weekend. They're a nuts team. But you look towards Epsilon, Fake Out, Econ, and Demensa now. They're cracking players. The Mensa is the one I've got to really point out there because I'm surprised he's not into the RLRS already, you know? And that Epsilon, headed up by Fake Out, but remember Econ as well is a great sort of captain figure and has got a great mental game. That's one which I've got to go back through and see more VODs of, because this is a team that, again, were looking to be a big benchmark for near enough the whole of Europe, if you for the bubble scene there. For you to be able to take down Epsilon, I think makes you of a top end caliber. Like, the only 2 teams that are able to take down Epsilon this current season within the Star League was Servette Geneva and Solari. And they're currently sitting right up there in the middle, and that for me is very fair. And going forward into the finals, like, they're going to be one of the weaker teams, I'm going to just say right now, but they're going to be ones which I think are going to be a dark horse naturally, but also if any team can beat them, it's going to be good tidings, especially from the opposite group that hasn't been confirmed yet, because the red group is the only one that's been confirmed. So you look back to blue, you know, and there I'm looking at, okay, these are the French teams that I don't know too much about. So I could see Baguette Squad taking down Epsilon, but when it comes down to Space Knights or Zolu Taching, I know that's a little bit easier because it's a old guard bubble team. That's the real test for them, is to take down Epsilon.
Well, on the topic of Epsilon, actually, I kind of wanted to discuss a bit more details about this team, because Fakao and Ekon have been playing under with my boys in a lot of the weekly cups and the Rising Star, the Star League cups as well that are being run every other Sunday. And they're not playing with Dementia, actually. They're playing with I forget the kid's name now, but another French player who's from the French-speaking region, and they've looked relatively impressive. But it's sort of like been the question of, hey ho, you know, like, are they going to keep playing like this? Are they going to, like, you know, bring this guy on for the rest of the Epsilon Esports side? Like, you know, like, is this team as competent as what you might initially suggest here, Bacon? Is the question I'm trying to ask about Epsilon.
So, is it Primey that you're thinking?
No. Hold on. Let me see if I can bring it up real quick. Cause I've got to find it now. Hold on. I keep talking for a minute while I just sort of like run through it and see if I can figure these out.
Because I know that Fake Out, who has been largely, you know, leading this team, has been looking at other players. Like I've seen him play every now and then with Milo, I think it was, and that it's going to be interesting to see what it does with. But, you know, when you've got an org like Epsilon behind you, which, yes, have had a lot of controversy in the past, but it's purely because those contracts have been absolutely arse. And like we always say, make sure if you're signing the contract to check it over, like with a lawyer or just simply with family members, you know, a second pair of eyes. And it always comes down to Epsilon do support, but they run themselves as a business first and foremost. And if they can go far, this would be great things for them. And Epsilon's not going to, you know, sign any old team. They're looking towards that old connection, of course, with Fake Out, but then also the potential that he can supply and what he can bring for them.
Okay, so the two players I've been playing with are Prime and Milo, and both of them have been looking pretty impressive so far. But I have to ask, you know, is that worthy of sort of like a move away from Dementia's part of things for Epsilon? Or like, what do you think about that team?
So Dementia, for me, clearly this is more them trying to test the waters. I think the Mensa is the safer bet right now, and for them not to use, and if you look towards Fake Out, he's also not been using Econ all the time in the different Nice Cactus Cups. This feels just more like it's more Fake Out wanting to sign up, and maybe the other two aren't available on those nights, but also that he's just trying to have a search around, and Fake Out knows he's got an org with him and he wants to go far. This lad has got so much passion for Rocket League and to go far that he's just trying to find his best sort of bet going forward. He knows that the spring series is coming up, and then also that he really wants to make it in next season, of course. And right now it just comes down to, is there anyone that can fit with him? Because he's I wouldn't say very self-focused as a player, but also he will be looking to be the captain of a team. So Econ was a little bit of an interesting one for me, but where Econ as well has got that mentality of being a captain, it's worked quite well to have a very mental game for this Epsilon side, with Dementia just being a nuts mechanical player to finish it off. And you'll see that with Milo and Prime as well, where they're just purely mechanical players.
All right, then. Well, that kind of concludes our discussion about the Rocket Baguette Star League, and I guess we'll move on away from the French region to the German region. Firewall doing their Star League stuff. Obviously, this is the tournament for Germany, Austria, and Netherlands-based teams. And in Star League Blue, we have Esports Rhein-Neckar, Minx, Luxor, Dog Esports, Vertex, Esport BERG, and Paint 4D in that blue side of things. And they've finished up all their matches, Bacon. So your final standings for the Star League stuff is Vertex, BERG, Minx in top 3, Dog Esports, Luxor hold on to another season of Star League, Paint 4D and Esports Rhein-Neckar hold on to 6th and 7th position and look to try and play against the promotion playoffs. I think there was an 8th team in this league as well. But I think that due to certain reasons, they've been removed. There have been some disqualifications going on over the course of several different of the European sort of leagues. But that's coverage for another time right now. Over in red, we do have all 8 teams still listed on the system, where we've got Minx Shadow, VENC, I'm not sure if that's Venk or just the letters, Venk Gaming, JO, Stealth 7 Esports, Red Flick, High Risk, RJM, and Lost A München. And once again, these teams have already finished up all their matches as of this recording. So RJM finishing top place, no surprises there. Venk down in second, Lost A München in third place. Minx Shadow and JO are taking the middle table and trying to stay into the next season of the Star League. High Risk and Red Flick are fighting for their promotion playoffs positions, and Stealth 7 got completely swept in the season, so they'll be relegated to to Rising League. So I did say Vertex in blue. The main reason is because they're listed as Vertex, but after the season concluded and after their matches concluded, obviously Vertex have now split away from their organization. So Coco, Nagflow, and Dumain are going to play out the rest of the Rising Star season. I'm not sure where they go from there, though, Bacon. Because they're holding their playoff spot in blue. They are the top end of the table by a single game, though. Obviously, this was a team that we had a lot of doubts coming into this one. We were talking about the potential end of their story. And again, very similar stuff to like the Baguette squad and Servette Geneva. They didn't have the greatest run in rival series, but here they're still in decent shape in the bubble scene. Is this the end of their story, though? Is it just going to be a case? Is this just going to be a case that they'll play out the rest of this season and split ways from there, or are they going to, are they going to try and carry this on after the fact?
So this is an awkward one because naturally Coca and Dumain continued forward from last season. Sorry, Coca and Nagflow continued forward from last season, and I really don't know because this for me feels like a failed project, you know, where yes, they got relegated from previous season. Coming into this season, I thought they were the most together team. As soon as the pressure hit them of RLCS, they flopped super hard. So for me, I think it is best for them to go split their separate ways, you know, and just finish out this season. But that is so harsh to say when they're the top of their group, you know? And for me, that comes down to the talent coming through from the regions of Germany, Netherlands, and I'm trying to look around what other, like Austria as well, which is an interesting one as well, because I've seen some Belgium and Dutch teams that are playing in the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars, and yet they're also in the German one as well. So I don't know what the overlap is there. But like I said, yeah, Austrians as well. And it just feels very odd for me that they just can't get it to click together, because they're clearly a step above the bubble scene, aren't they, when it comes to them fighting against the bubble scene? But as soon as it comes to them fighting against the rival series teams, they drop off something hard. So I feel it comes down to more when you've got the time to practice and you know what teams you're coming up against to. Vertex at ease, they're playing a very basic style, and yes, they are very much pass heavy and focused on each other, that they can get broken down very easily, and that to me is something that's not going to change, you know?
Yeah, possibly. Again, I'm sort of talking about the volatility about the bubble scene in general. Obviously, is the fact that, you know, they're out of rival series. Therefore, you know, by all accounts, according to what the general scene sort of looks at, you know, after the rival series, that there's nothing left for them. Obviously, that's not the case in realistic time, because, you know, that's what the Rising Stars is there for. But I also think that you know, the mentality certainly would be there for Vertex individually to be in a very weird sort of position to sort of like say, hey, actually, do you know what? I don't really want to go ahead and carry on with this project. And I think that kind of you were right about saying, hey, maybe this project has sort of like hit its end. I feel like that you know, they've tried their best. Obviously, Ex-Vertex now no longer under organization. Not even their org has faith in them anymore. And I feel like, yeah, this might end up just being one last hurrah for them more than anything else before they, like, you know, either make a roster move, which they have done before. You know, obviously we talked about them potentially, you know, splitting last season, and they didn't do that. They made a roster move to bring Dumain in. I
can bet you money now Coca's going to be on the way out. If they all don't go their separate ways, Nagflow and Dumain will stick together.
We'll find out whether or not that actually end up being the case with Vertex. But yeah, I do believe that there's a good chance they'll be out of the running for this one. So yeah, let's move on and talk about Esport BERG, who had a pretty impressive showing, actually. Again, once again, a bunch of players that I've never heard of here, Bacon. I don't know how much you know about these guys.
I have no heckin' idea about any of these lads. Unfortunately, I haven't been able... I've seen one or two of the Firewall games this season. It's just been awkward times for me to watch them. But yeah, like... The ones I've seen were with Minx, because Minx are the ones I'm quite interested with, mainly with Ice Teasy being an old guard, OG players, Zeta, of course, quite like. Scream as well has been quite interesting as the lad coming through. But yeah, Esport BERG, I have no idea who these guys are, and they have just done phenomenally this season.
Well, I wanted to ask you on that respect because obviously, neither of us have heard about these players. We haven't had the chance to watch them in particular. Obviously, there's a lot of matches going on. Not all of them are on stream. But with the Berg side, are these guys one to watch for the future potentially, or what do we think about this team going into their position now locked in the final playoffs?
So, spoilers for later down the line, I guess. Remember, you must have saw the, I want to say, is it Georgia Joe? Or quality control sort of teams within the Europa. It's very much the same, it feels like. These are kids that are coming through and absolutely going ham, but the longevity, I think, isn't going to be there. Like, this is very much a shot in the dark, and it's too early for them. And that's not me being mean to the lads. I feel like they're not there yet. They're still a year off from being RLRS ready if they do become that. I just don't see any signs of mental preparation from these kids, and that they are going to be able to handle the RLRS. I mean, even then, the teams where we think they should be able to handle it, Vertex, who are in the same league as them, showed that they just couldn't. So for me, it's too soon to make a big call on these players, and I don't want to, build them up as, oh my God, look at these guys, and then they flop out hard in the next round, into the finals, because there realistically isn't enough history about them. Not enough history as a point. So the team does not have its own Wikipedia page. The players don't have their own Wikipedia pages. That for me is very telling,
Yeah, I am. I mean, again, that's not to go too harsh into the guys. Obviously, this is the start, I think, of their careers, if there is a career ahead of them. But yet, it's going to be in a bit of a weird one.
I don't want to put any pressure on them too early, is basically the thing to take away there.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how well they'll hold themselves off for the Berg side. But moving on after the fact, obviously you have to talk about RJM, because whilst there have been some weird sort of results, obviously from the other Rival Series teams or Rival Series alumni, RJM did stay in the Rival Series, and it shows how much of a world apart they are compared to these guys, because they had a flawless season, 21-2 on their game one-loss record.
One team got those two, by the way, Venk.
Yeah, and obviously that team became in second place. So obviously we'll talk a bit more detail about Venk, I think, in a future podcast. But for RJM, obviously, they've shown to be the best in red. And could it be a case that they showed themselves to be the best in not only the Star League, but also the Superstar League going forward, when they probably inevitably qualify for that as well, Bacon?
Oh, I think so. RJM are a cut above. They are safely RLRS quality, and I think largely, if you're in the RLRS, this is the sort of team level that you want to be at, even, and they're when you look towards them and compare them to, say, like Triple Trouble had a bit more of a shakier season, even though they came out with the exact same number of wins and losses and the same number of game wins and losses, which is quite funny. You look at RGM and you think they comfortably stayed within the RLRS. It wasn't that sort of squeaky bum time right at the end for them, was it? And you look at how they're playing against these bubble teams, and you're just like, ouch. This is unfair on these other teams with all these 3-0s. And again, fairly comfortable 3-0s. Don't get me wrong, that does also come down to how RGM plays, and they're very much a by-the-book team. But yeah, it just comes down straight and forward to these lads. In the nicest way possible of putting it, why are they even bothering with this? Because it just feels like, and for me, this is great for the team's mentality, because they've got to keep warm. They've got to keep on their toes. They can't get complacent. I mean, don't get me wrong. It felt like BDS got a little bit complacent in the offseason, but they came back stronger. They were clearly working on their own plans. But this is RGM looking at what the bubble scene is bringing through and making sure that they are continuously slapping them down. They know they're a step ahead, and they've got to continuously prove that, not to everyone else, but to themselves, by making sure that they are continuously ready for whatever new strategies coming through, whatever new play styles come through, continuously prepared, and that is great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of RJM's sort of mentality here, because obviously with their off season coming up here, they probably won't be in a decent position to take a spot in the in like the final stage of the spring series, for instance. So it won't quite be as easy as what they think about it. So this is the next best thing. And obviously I love that idea, that the fact that they're just going to hold their own, they're going to make sure that they hold control, and they look towards a decent spot here in Star League. Again, I do believe that in the best case scenario, RJM wouldn't be here at all, and actually this would be the qualifying league for Rival Series, but that's another story for another day, I think, anyway, than anything else. At the end of the day, RJM, right now they're looking for the best in show across all of the Star Leagues, and they're looking the best in show for a Superstar League victory here. So right now, keep your eyes on them going into those final playoffs there for the Firewall portion of Star League. Let's move on. Let's go to the Golden Dust portion of Star League. Obviously, this is the tournament series for the teams from Spain and Portugal. We'll start with blue, where we've got Bandoleros, Dead Rabbits, FTW Evo, Hate for Freestyle, Team Sominum, Pushing Gaming, RCD Espanyol, and Team Paragon, of which RCD Espanyol currently are at the top. 6-1 on their record. Actually, all three teams have 6-1 on their record in the top three. So RCD, Pushing Gaming, and Team Somnium are currently in those positions, obviously with a single game difference separating RCD and the Pushing Gaming and Somnium side. So not that too far gone, honestly. Like, RCD, again, expected to be in this position, but a lot closer than what actually the numbers seem to insinuate. In the 4th and 5th position, we've got Dead Rabbits and FCW Evo. We've seen a lot of Dead Rabbits in a lot of the weeklies. They've made it quite far in a lot of those weekly championships. Number 6 and 7 is Hate for Freestyle and Bandoleros. They'll be fighting in the promotion playoffs at the moment, but Bandoleros are still contested by Paragon. They've got an opportunity with a little bit of luck and a good win on their side. They can still sort of steal away that second to last spot and avoid the auto relegation from blue. And then over in Star League Red, we've got... Oh, bloody hell. Bakalu, Abaras, SUPRMODE, Descendo Squad, EC4 Gaming, Firewall Gaming, Galazy Bang, Night Skills, Weed Bots, all competing, and their table is basically finished at this point. SUPRMODE, Galazy Bang, and the name I can't pronounce, all in top 3. 6-1 on SUPRMODE and Galazy Bang, with a +15 and +9 game difference between those top two teams in the top of the league. And then Weed Bots, Night Skills in 4th and 5th. EC4 and Firewall fighting for their spot in promotions, and Descendo down to the auto relegation spot. Let's start with RCD, obviously. Obviously, the headline performance from them so far in this one, and they look pretty good, but again, a lot closer than what we expected here, Bacon. Let's have some thoughts about this.
So, RCD, it's very much akin to... let's say the Solari sort of wins and all of that earlier. Maybe even not that, more towards Servette and Eva. So RCD Espanyol are in a group that, for me anyway, their biggest problem is Pushing Gaming. After that, I would have put... that's it, really. Like this, like Spain has got some super bright stars, and in this group, it comes down to Pushing Gaming and Espanyol. Pushing, for me, are quite a clever side where it seems as if they actually do look up their opponents and try and like work. They're definitely scrimming with so many of the Spanish teams, and I've even seen them trying against some of the Italian sides. And this is a team that really wants to put in the work. I don't think it's going to happen in the coming season, but the season afterwards, where they will be ready for RLCS. But they're like Pushing Gaming are a team which I've got big hopes for, as the players are just really, really knowing what they need to do and continuously evolving. So that's a great thing. But with RCD Espanyol, I can see warning lights, Jay.
Yeah, I was going to say, because at the end of last week, we were talking a lot about how RCD are not in the best of positions because of the fact that they had a very close affair. And if they had lost their game 5s in Rival Series, then they would be in a very different position than contesting for the top end of the league. And now, given the context of this league now, where they're not doing that great against bubble scene teams, you have to question whether or not RCD are as confident as anyone really thought they would be here, Bacon. And I kind of wanted to get your analysis on this one, because yeah, they're headlining the top 3, but there's only a handful of 3-0s in this league as well, and I'm not 100% convinced at the moment. I think that this might actually be a much lesser team than what we initially thought.
So the big one to take away here is, like I said, RCD and Pushing should be a step above everyone else. So RCD going to game 5 against Pushing, I'm fine with, because Pushing game would have had tons of resources to use to learn about this RCD side. So we'll take that as what it is. But the 3-0 loss to Team Summoning is bigger for me because of 3-0 naturally. And I guess losing a game to Team Paragon, even though Team Paragon are the worst team in the league, okay, just allow it. But there's that 3-0 loss, to me, shows one of the biggest problems that I've seen from RCD. And that is just sometimes, if it's not their day, they're not worth their salt, you know? And we've seen this throughout TEI. We've seen it in, the RLCS sometimes. And it just comes down to RCD for me. They can even not be consistent in a series, especially in the RLCS. And when it comes over to here, where they can have a struggle, like this just feels like, yes, it shows their quality, but they're going up against bold teams. They're going up against teams like I said, the only one there that I think is worth anything at the moment is Pushing Gaming. When they're dropping off and looking a little bit against Team Paragon, and it just puts you into question, like, what is going on with this team right now to be so damn good? Their potential is so high. Like RCD Espanyol, if they're on a good day, could be looking at a singularity, grade performance, I'm going to say right now. So just the safe part of RLCS, but they cannot hold that level at all. And that for me is what is majorly worrying.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be keeping a close eye on these guys going into playoffs. Sorry, go on.
That's it. So when they go into playoffs and maybe even make it off into the Superstar League, so the final evolution where all the different nationalities come together, RCD Espanyol, I think they'll make it through to that Superstar League, but I could see them crumble straight away.
No, I was going to say, that's the reason why I'm keeping my eyes on them, because I could see them potentially falter in the final playoffs. I could see them potentially falter in Superstar League. I think actually that might be a very likely sort of thing. It should be noted, by the way, that only top 3 make it into Superstar League, so there's a chance that RCD might not even go that far, because if they fall in the semi-finals, then lose to a powerful third-place matchup, then that's it for them. And, the hype that would just be killed stone cold dead right there.
Well, in Spain anyway, because of course with blue and red, you look to it and there are 4 teams that could contest it. Like you've got Pushing Gaming and RCD, but let's start talking about over on the red side, Jay, with SUPRMODE and Galazy Bang right now.
Yeah, I wanted to transition to that because, obviously we've talked a lot about the Spanish Bim Bam style. I think this is the first tournament that's brought it to international light, because I feel like that these two teams, as you say, they could be in a very good position. SUPRMODE in particular, this is a team that was made up of some very, very fun little talents that we sort of highlighted in the last play-in preview. Boomquick, Rubik's, Luisp. I think you may have actually picked Luisp's team to make it in from the play-ins last season. They didn't quite make it that far, but this season shows, and this Star League shows, that they have not missed a beat since that point. 15 plus on the game difference. One of the most confident showings in all of the Rising Stars leagues so far. Like, that is so good from SUPRMODE, and, I feel like this team, even though I haven't seen many of their matches, they only lost their first one very recently. They were already secured before they finished the final few games of the season. But these guys are looking on fleek right now. They are so powerful.
Yeah, and largely it comes down to Boomquick. He is a beast of a player. Like, you've got to keep him in mind for everything. And then you see from last season, I think it was the previous Dead Rabbits team that made it so far. They split into 2. VK Salem went off towards Galazy Bang, and then Rubik's and Lewis P joined Boomquick here. And this SUPRMODE team is going to be, and I can feel it, the next hot thing from Spain. And it is just all coming together perfectly for them. And this, again, is the perfect testing ground. Their loss throughout the whole of it, I'm just going to quickly check, was towards Night Skills, which, again, I've no idea about these. I didn't see that game. I have no idea how they lost. I'm just going to quickly check if that was even recorded, because that's one of the ones, like, the problem with this league is that not every single game is played out. And that was actually last week. And that was in game 5. And unfortunately, no, there's no VOD of it. It was done off stream. So that's a big, big sad, because that had been an interesting one to see. But
again, Psionic, support this tournament. Make sure it's a demand that we can see all the matches, because honestly, again, this could be such a great little bit of infrastructure to the bubble scene. But I digress. Please continue, Bacon.
No, but for me, that just shows like them losing in close game 5 to a team that is a mid-table one, and it just goes to maybe that just was an off day for them, and that happens to everyone. We're being harsh on RCD Espanyol, but that's purely because they're a team that are currently in the fucking promotion playoffs. You can't have a bad day, can you? When you're at that level. But for these guys that are trying to learn, that can see, the sky's the limit for these lads.
Yeah.
Like I said, I see another RCD Espanyol blooming from these kids.
Honestly, SUPRMODE could possibly be the most exciting team to come out of the Star Leagues, and alongside RCD, they're in the other side of the bracket. But if they face RCD in those finals, then that will really be the proving ground for this side. SUPRMODE could be the next big Spanish Bim Bam side. And especially going into the off-season, especially going into the rest of the play-ins potentially. Like, I'm taking a look at this side saying, look, right now they're already down as one of my big picks. They're already down as one of my guys to potentially make it in. Obviously, that might change later down the road. But for now, like, I'm locking it in, because this team have just been so dominant against some pretty decent teams as well, Like, they even beat the Galazy Bang side, who you highlighted as potentially being a side that could be well respected in their own right. And they've been competing in all the other cups. SUPRMODE have been competing in the international European scene as a whole in the weeklies and the Rising, the Star League Cups, going very far as well, against some very respectable players who, and I realize that obviously those are weeklies and individual cups that don't mean much in the grand scale of things, but it is like a nice little proving ground for these teams to scrim against each other and potentially get some information going into the Superstar League. So SUPRMODE have already got a lot of experience ahead of them, and they haven't even reached the point where they're going to start taking these teams on for serious,
Yeah. Basically, what they're showing right now, all the hallmarks for a team that makes the RLRS play-ins and goes through. That's what we're saying. There is always a pattern. There is always a trend. And right now, SUPRMODE are showing that trend. So if I was to make a call, way early, and right now we are way too early to make any proper calls, but this SUPRMODE team is the only one I'd be confident in saying are going to be proper contenders next season, as long as they stay together, because of course we're months away right now. So who knows? It could be next month the team just falls apart because players have issues with each other. That naturally happens at the bubble scene level. But if they can stay together and they can weather the storm of this off season, SUPRMODE have got the world at their feet, because this team, it's taken a while to find each other properly, and now that they're putting the performances in and they are getting the job done. And for me, like, currently out of all the non-RLRS teams to go through to Superstar League, this is your best bet, akin to a Dead Rabbits from last season. This is the team to do it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do. I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion about SUPRMODE. Again, we'll bring you more details about how well they do in those Star League playoffs. For Galazy Bang, though, they're the final team we want to discuss from the red side of the Star League. Obviously, this is the team that you mentioned, VK Salen, splitting away from Rubik's and Luis. And they've been doing pretty all right. Again, not quite as impressive as SUPRMODE, but I think they've gotten a couple of decent upsets against SUPRMODE in the past in some of the, Star League Cups and, of course, the Nice Cactus Weeklies. So for these guys, obviously, they've got a couple of decent results going towards their favor. And for Galazy Bang, they're a team that we consistently see cropping up in all these tournaments. They're a team that we consistently see them going far as well, of similar ilk towards SUPRMODE. So, what is it about this team that put them in second place in Star League Red?
Largely, it comes down to this new formed combination between VK Salen and Espimita, where both of them have been around in the Spanish scene for ages, and it just took that last change, for the team to split and go, okay, we need to go our separate ways. Let's, you see that all the time. Fuck it. You look over towards, though, now we're singularity in the RLCS, but then you look to the other two, down in the RLRS as RJM with Mike Boy and Justice, and you just see that sometimes you do have to split apart and go your separate ways to make better teams, but you continue through what you learn. And VK Salem just is such a great aggressive player, whilst also keeping a good track of what his teammates are doing. And Esper as well is a very smart player on the pitch, and it really pulls through this super aggressive Bim Bam style. But then also for me, the only thing that needs to be fixed is their defense, not because of the clutch potential this team has. Like, every single time they save the ball, it is jumping across net, but it's more just making sure that they've got a solidified defense. They want to play quick and fast right on our defense, and I feel like they need to be able to, have a switch to turn off and on, and that will make them such a good, maybe even play-ins worthy team, where they just got to be able to account for every single play style, not just themselves on the Spanish scene, not just them when they play in the Rocket Baguette, weeklies with nice characters and all of that, but when they go up against the German sides, which defense is so important against, isn't it? Because they will pick that apart. They like their pressure plays where you can't be clutch against. And so for me, Galazy Bang are just one step away from being, at the same level as SUPRMODE is. Don't get me wrong, SUPRMODE could also benefit from that, but I just feel like they're a more with it team. Galazy Bang is just like half a step behind, really, SUPRMODE. But they could be there. Like Galazy Bang, remember last season, not completely as this format, but remember I was saying like this team is almost ready. Like they were one of my wild cards, weren't they? And No Horizon, which you got to remember was Boom Quick as well last season, was one which was in there as well. So Spain has got so much talent coming on through, and it's been very akin to France. And it just comes down to when those Spanish teams finally get it together, your RCD Espanyol, your BDS, they have it fucking together and they are dominating. But it comes down to certain players finally finding the chemistry, finding each other, and it goes through a lot of each season, splitting up, finding new teams to go with and finding new formations. And right now, Galazy Bang and SUPRMODE are looking crazy good.
I think I have to say the most exciting teams are coming out of Spain this season, so we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on Golden Dust as it continues on. But for now, we have to move on. We're pressed for time a little bit, actually. And we have to go to the Europa Rising Stars, the final region, of course, the best of the rest, essentially. So we've had all the regions for like the French-speaking, the German-speaking, and the Spanish-speaking regions. And this is, of course, the one for everywhere else who doesn't really fit into those categories. So we'll start with Blue. We have 8 teams from Blue. Well, technically 7, but we'll get to that in a second. Again, Cubicles, Yoro, is that how you're going to say that? I don't fucking know. It's Joris, apparently Jack and Joyo, obviously, with Joris obviously being that player that we talked about from the likes of the Triple Trouble rumours. Only who I'm not going to bother fucking with that one. Online, is that what it's supposed to be said?
That's what it is basically, but in I want to say Czech or something like that. I can't remember where they're from. It's Czech
from Czechoslovakia. So basically the Adria region. All right, fine. So onliners, Quality Control, SandRock Gaming, Bunny Killer XXXX, and YouTube. Now I will note that the results do not include SandRock because all their results got reverted to 3-0s and they got wiped from the fucking board because SandRock basically hit the penalty point limit of not turning up to matches, not scheduling matches and delaying matches for way too long. Part of that was down to the TEI, the other part was down to them after the fact because this result and this decision came in like about a week after TEI had finished. So at that point, fuck them. That's all I'm going to say.
And again, you can, off the back of that, you can see SandRock pushed for TEI. They were really practicing for that to the point of them just not even giving a shit about the Europa Rising Stars, which again, angered us as, onlookers into this.
Well, that's
understandable, don't get me wrong, but it just, this is another problem, because even then, by their point in that, they had already dropped a game, and it just looked like they weren't any better in the Europa Rising Stars anyway than any of the other bubble teams here.
Yeah, and it should be noted that SandRock could have potentially done some decent work here. But the fact of the matter is that they didn't bother to correct themselves and try and get into a decent position because it's not like this decision came in the middle of TEI. The Rising Stars admins were very understandable to that factor. But SandRock decided not to continue on with this one because, as you say, they couldn't give a shit. And I'm not being funny. I understand that if you have better
lack of communication.
Yeah, I understand if you have more better commitments to commit to, then fair play. But then why haven't RJM and RCD been disqualified? Why haven't Servette, Geneva and Solari been disqualified? Why haven't Baguette squad been disqualified? This is the only team from this quote-unquote level, because I don't consider SandRock to be on that level, that have really decided to fall out of Europa and from the Rising Stars as a whole. So it's no excuse. I'm sorry.
I'm going to bring it up as well, because this is one thing I've learned from the Asian tournaments and the Asian regions. Middle Eastern players, and some maybe from SandRock Gaming, are a pain in the ass to deal with from TO perspective, because don't get me wrong, Asia, like we said before, has got a bit of a problem just because the Middle Eastern region is part of the Asian region, but of course there's very specific servers that you can play on. Again, the Indian servers where it does make it fair and in between, but it just comes down to a lot of the Middle Eastern teams. There is very little respect coming from them. There is no communication at all, and then it is very common to just be in the middle of a game and them to drop straight on out because the server's not up, but not let anyone know that, not talk that. Some of the players having dinner or whatever, and they're 10 minutes for a late, they get DQ'd on out, and you're still there in the servers or whatever, and they pop up 15 minutes because we're just doing our talk over and all of that. And this is just becoming way too commonplace. Yeah. SandRock is trying to propel itself as being, this is why Middle East needs to be within, RLCS and officially recognized. The problem is there are, yes, good players there, but their own attitudes are really making it hard for everyone else to really take them seriously.
No, I agree. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what level you're playing, and I have consistently applied this to every single team across the board. If you're not going to commit to a tournament, then just get fucked, as far as I'm concerned, It's again, SandRock have had one good performance, and they still lost to teams in this tournament, so Annie up. Anyways, back to the results. Quality Control, Joyoro, and Onliners are all in the top 3 position of the Europa Rising Stars. Again, you choose Bunny Killer and Cubicles are down in the bottom end of the table, the bottom 4, which means that they are out and eliminated. Over in the red side, we've got 2 EUs, 1 Degenerate. We've got Aeriality, Broodings, Exilium Esports, Keck W, WLF, and Void. I believe there was also another team in this league that also got disqualified, but for some reason they're not showing up on Wikipedia. I don't know what that's about. I could be wrong on that respect, don't quote me. But other than one match to be played out, the standings are basically done at this point. WLF, Void, and Aeriality in that top 3. Exilium, Broodings, Keck W, and 2 EUs are in the bottom 4. So that leaves your final standings for the play-in. So let's go to... Let's talk about the blue side, obviously, because they've got their top 3 confirmed already, and on paper you don't know about these players for most of the guys. So I kind of want to go broad strokes. Start with the top, go from the bottom. Quality Control, Archie, Hibbs, Hakeem. This is actually the one team that got the 1 win above the SandRock Gaming side before they got DQ'd. So there's already a little bit of a rep going these guys' way. But what do you think about the composition of this team?
So I actually got to cast these lads, which is the only thing I can say about the entire league, which is quite funny. But
I was with you on that cast, by the way, so I know what the points you're going to make, but please make them.
Yeah. So it just comes down to Archie, Hibbs, and Hakeem. Yeah, they look good. When they're taking the game seriously, Jesus Christ, there were some really sloppy games amongst that all. And it's very odd because you think, they have a sloppy game, their opponents will be able to pick up on them. But their sloppy games are so disjointed that suddenly coming off being absolutely baller, they go super sloppy. Their opponents don't know if they're going to go for the ball or not. Now, at bubble level, this is really weird, disjointed, but as soon as you get to an RLRS level, and this is one thing which I feel like they're not ready for RLRS, their opponents are just going to wash them. And they won't be able to recover to have a good game. It almost feels like they'll play game 1 very, very well. They're great at coming out of the gates. Game 2, they just completely drop the ball. And game 3, they're allowed to come on back because their opponents haven't recovered and haven't learned it. And then game 4, whatever happens. But if you were there and they were going up against an RLCS level, yes, that game 1 would still be there because they're playing absolutely fucking phenomenally. But game 2, they would have got rinsed something like 7-0. Game 3, they wouldn't have had the chance to re-pick up whatever they dropped because it just completely kicked to the curb by that point, and you're just into game 3, 1-1 at that point. And this is my problem with quality control. They've got all the makings. These are 3 fantastic players, but I don't see them sticking longer together as a team because they fundamentally need some old guard player or someone that is mentally strong to really keep this team formulated, because this is just 3 very scrappy, very mechanically capable players that are just absolutely hauling ass, beating everyone to the ball because they are fucking wicked fast. But when it comes to the second game, when suddenly those things aren't working, they look a shadow of themselves and possibly one of the weakest teams in the league, which is so interesting to see because they've only dropped 9 games, but it's just that consistent every single series. They will drop at least 1 game,
No, I was going to say, honestly, of all the fieldings and top 3s and all the leagues we've covered so far, this has to be one of the weakest ones, and most of it is down to quality control. I think that despite the fact they've gone 6-0, their own stance in some of the matches that they've had so far, they've mostly been very similar to RCD, where they've been mostly 3-2s, a 3-1, and a 3-0 against one of the worst teams in the league. So it's they've not really had the best of times. All in all, I think that this could end up being a bit of a disaster for them going forward. I don't know how much stock I can hold really in this team at the moment. But that kind of this is the main highlight of the top 3. I don't have much to say on George Arrow because I haven't seen them. The only thing I can really talk about them is one player's particular toxicity, and part of the reason why I made that rant last week about the bubble scene teams. But I won't get into that details this week. The team I really want to highlight from the top 3 though is onliners, Nauman, Lorty, and Dave. And obviously we know some of these players. Nauman and Lorty. That is power.
An old god team.
Yeah, that is some real big fucking, old names right now. And I'm glad to see them still competing in the bubble scene. But, we've seen what they could do. We've seen some of the opportunities. Obviously, we know Lorty from, I believe it was Underwater Squad back in the day. He also competed with Fnatic in Elite Series. Nauman has not been at a very high level since, I believe, the Fnatic squad of Gfinity Season 3. So what do we think about this team? Because while on paper they should be pretty good, they did go 3-3, and they are easily the worst ranked of all the teams in the league play here.
This is going to hurt to say, and it's me being blunt, but they're past it now. And
they're past
that
it.
Hurts me. Yeah, this is a team that will do great on weeklies, and you'll continuously see them sneaking on into top 4. But the run for RLCS, that dream is gone. And this is and I've said this before about players, in the past, and it just comes down to, they're not mechanically capable. They've got good mindsets, but you look at their results in this league right now, and they're 3-for-3. It just comes down to how close knit this league, as across the board with all the different rising stars, this has got the closest skill level out of any of the across the board of all the teams, and especially in blue. And I just look at them and go, yeah, they're able to keep their heads above water, but that is all they're doing. They're not swimming yet, and I feel like with all the experience they have as a team, it's just not going to happen.
Well, experience only gets you so far when the when the mechanics start to go forward again. That's all based around mechanics. So I don't know about whether or not they'll be able to hold their own. But that's the best I can say for top 3 blue. I think that all in all, that's probably the weakest fielding. But moving on to red, slightly more better. Although I won't lie to you, compared to the likes of Golden Dust and Firewall and Rocket Baguette, the standings here also don't really scream of anything massive. massive. We've got WLF Void and Aeriality still in that position. WLF, obviously, these guys are washed. Just straight up. Like
they're not washed as such. It's just they can never make that final jump, and they're good. They continuously stick about the weeklies and national scenes, but you look at, say, RG on that side is a massive carry, of course, and you've seen him just pop off onto the mouse, and it feels like, especially upon that knowledge, this team is done after this, after the Rising Stars and all of that, because the WLF name will continue about with Lindo and CKS, but they can't make that next step. They never have, and harshly again, I don't think they will. They're continuously the gatekeepers, and if there was this third level to the RLCS, RLRS, and let's say Rising Stars, even though they wouldn't call that because that's another RS, they'd be in there very comfortably, but they just cannot make that next step up to the RLRS, can they?
Well, the only player that I can really think of on this team that's doing all right, and the only player that I can think of that has potential in this roster, obviously, is Arju from WLF. Like, he'll be the carry for these guys. But even then, no, I don't even see him sticking around. Yeah, I don't even see him sticking around after this, after Rising Stars and after Superstar League, because he's bound for better things, you know? He's already probably going to be the third for Mouse Sports, like, and credit to him, he absolutely deserves it. But as for the rest of WLF, obviously, Lindau, CKS, Money Talk, very known elements of WLF, and they've never been able to do anything outside of the bubble scene, potentially with a couple of rival series playing spots, and just it's not going to work. Wrong,
that can change. Like, we've seen it in the past, like with teams where suddenly just one season it clicks and they're nuts. But do we see that happening? Like, with how long this WLF team has been around? Like I said, they've been at the same level for so long, which isn't bad, but it's just the problem of how deep the official psionic system goes. They're not good enough. They're at a level that is below what is deemed as pro or even semi-pro at that point, with you class in RLRS as semi-pro, you know? And it just comes down to, unfortunately, the structure that Psionics has put in place does not account for them.
Doesn't account for them, doesn't account for most of the teams here as well, but I digress. Void is the second place team here. We've got Magu, Mercy, and Riot. A couple of decent British players, actually. Yep. Do we see them rating higher than Quality Control, though?
I think I'm going to say yes, but that's just because Maggie and Mercy have been together for ages and Rise is quite good. I feel like they've just got the long-term experience together that should do them well, but relatively speaking, it's like for like. It's a 50-50 between those two, you know? And I feel like the quality of teams in this in red has actually been higher, so for them to only be 4-2 is absolutely fine, and I feel like they are pretty much on par with Quality Control.
Yeah, possibly. I can see that. I think they probably would be a bit better than Quality Control because I have seen what these players can do, and I think the Void are a little bit more consistent in terms of the team play. I think if you put them head-to-head against each other in the playoffs, for instance, then we could be seeing a much better time for the likes of Void, but that's a point to sort of bring to the table later on down the road. Obviously, we've got Aeriality to focus on as well, Tylacto, J-Rolls, and Very OB. This team is basically done at this point, but they're playing together in Rising Stars just to try to see if they can finish it off. Very similar to the likes of the Vertex guys. Tylacto is looking for teams and looking for players as well. He might form up another Aeriality team later. But I have to say that of all the players here, this team looks like they might just be the best show of field, even though they are in third place in this league. I think this Aeriality side possibly could be able to do some good stuff in Star League and in the playoffs, and potentially go make a run to Superstar.
They're the safest.
But I don't think they're going to go. Yeah, they're the safest squad to pick in terms of that respect. But like, I think that in terms of their chances in Superstar League, like, they won't go as far as some of the other teams we've already mentioned.
Oh, I absolutely agree wholeheartedly with that. Like you said, when it comes to the RLRS teams, Aeriality will get absolutely swept 3-0. But compared to the other bubble teams where they've got a lot more structure about themselves, they can hold their own. And that's the big difference there.
Yeah, and that basically sums it up in terms of the Rising Stars and the Star League stuff. So, of course, we'll be bringing you all the updates as the time goes on. We have to go through, I believe, the playoffs right now for the Star League. So we'll be bringing you all that information, and we'll try to see if we can watch some of the VODs as well outside of the promotion tournament, which obviously is the other thing we're going to be watching later on this week. And, of course, we have to move on to that point because that is our big final feature for today. We've been going on for a while, Bacon. Let's see if we can wrap this show up here. The 14 teams that are contesting for a spot in the next season of the RLCS are Endpoint, TSM, RCD Espanyol, and Solari. Obviously, we talked about RCD in a little bit of distance so far today, but we're going to kind of go through those teams one by one, point per point, and talk about a little bit of what they could do and what they'd be trying for here. So we'll start with Endpoint. Obviously, they are fending off their challengers at this point because they were in a similar sort of spot. They were one of the teams that auto-promoted last season. But here they are right now trying to fend off the manual promotion and the promotion playoff teams. And while we do think that they have got the talent here, do they have the potential against the likes of RCD, Solari, and TSM? In that context of a 4-team bracket, what do you think about Endpoint's chances?
I think of all 4 teams, Endpoint are the safest to go back up. They've got the experience. I feel they can hold off in the defense. Their problem is generally whether they go heavy in attack or heavy in defense. You know, they can pick one or the two. You know, against TSM, I see no worries there. Don't get me wrong. You look back towards the RLCS and, oh boy, spicy old times. But for me, I think Endpoint are, you know, they 3-0'd TSM. It started off a little bit tricky, but as soon like they can adapt on the fly to a team that is very much one-tricked, and I feel like Endpoint have got it easy against TSM, which already puts them into, you know, one of the promotion spots essentially. And Solari, where they're so heavy on attack, I think they should be able to come up with a counter. My worry comes down to Espanyol there and what Espanyol we see on the day, you know. But for me, Endpoint should be a safe pick to be one of the 2 to go up.
It should be noted this is best of 7 series as well, by the way. And that's the one thing I think with Endpoint right now that has kind of struggled, that they've struggled with over the course of their season. You know, like, you know, a lot of the times their early game looks relatively competent whenever they have a good series, but the late game is where things can get a bit more dicey for them, I feel like.
It depends on what they do throughout that, because we've seen sometimes they can open a series actually very middle of the road, but then they learn as they go on. It just comes down to their adaptation is their on-the-day performance. So they've got a benchmark and they'll keep that. That is largely down to Virtuo. So I'm going to say that lad has been crazy this season. Same with Natchtal. Always overlook Natchtal a little bit, but it comes down to Relay and Wave and how he fits into a season. And I feel horrible to say it. I reckon if Endpoints stay up next season, they'll probably be changing out Relay and Wave. And that hurts me because the lad's good, but I just feel like they need a star player amongst the mixed to really fit on in there. And it just comes down to no one on that team has got the capabilities to be the star-studded striker or player like every other team has, bar TSM.
Yeah, I feel that to a certain extent, but I do think that I'd have to agree that Endpoint are probably the best team out of the promotion team, out of the relegation teams, or the championship series teams, I should say. Let's see if I can get the fucking phrasing right. But, you know, of all the teams that are, of the 2 teams that are coming down from championship series, they probably are the best team to promote. TSM, on the other hand, are just they've not been good for a very long time.
Do they even need to turn up on the day they're done? You know, like, really, you're going to bother, lads? Well, who knows? They somehow stayed up last season. Like, you remember that, Jay?
I do remember that, yeah. It wasn't pretty, though. Let's be honest.
It wasn't. Like, it was super weird because Method just absolutely tanked hard. Singularity, for some reason, just could not get things going again in that game. Yet when they came up against Complexity, and don't get me wrong, Complexity were absolutely god-awful, realistically. Like, last season's promotion playoffs were the worst promotion playoffs out of any region, any season I have seen. And it just came down to Singularity again. Nolly has been such a good carry for him, and like that team should be worried about, you know, trying to maybe get rid of Godsmiller so early, because I could see one of the bigger teams maybe make a play for Nolly. And if, you know, they get rid of Godsmiller this early, then they've got to run back to Godsmiller to pick him up, purely because they need him to stay within the RLCS, you know. And this just comes down to TSM have just skirted by with pure luck. And I feel like it just really came down to singularity last season. Didn't expect to see TSM in that game. They had like put all their prep into complexity and method, not expecting TSM to be able to do anything. And this season, now TSM don't have that luck. You look towards this season, TSM straight off the bat are going up against RCD. RCD should be ready for that. And then afterwards, they're going up against an Endpoint Solari, who will be ready as well. They're not going to get any chances this season. They're done straight off the bat. I wouldn't be surprised if they get double 4-0'd.
Honestly, I have to agree with the luck part of things for TSM, because like they got lucky against AS Monaco because it was a case of who was less shit, and honestly, that matchup was.
And last season, Alpha fucking just 1v3'd. That was it.
I'm like, if it wasn't for AS Monaco being shit, TSM would be auto demoted. They would be out of this one. So I have to agree with the double 4-0s or the 2 series in a row. Like this team is done.
That's a possibility. Yeah.
It's entirely possible. Like it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. This team is done. I'm over it. They probably could have a decent showing in the rival series, but in championship series, just get fucked. Is the bottom line of it for TSM. Major changes would have to be made to that team.
TSM as an org, I'm going to be happy with a rival series team as well. Nope. And I doubt, after all this fucking effort and time they put in, that they'll go to look and pick up another RLCS team, purely because TSM as an org right now are in a little bit of an awkward situation, aren't they, with the whole current climate? So them dropping an org will probably save all their other teams. And after that, when they come back, well, they're going to want a team that's going to be winning worlds, because that is the TSM caliber and what they look out for. And you don't have that at the moment within RLCS, a team to pick up anyway for them.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way this team, if they drop, then TSM are probably going to be done with this roster. That's just probably the bottom line of it, and there's just no way. I don't think that they're gonna stay in. I mean, it would be a miracle if they did. I mean, we'll have to see some big dick energy from Remco. But even then, even if they do, if there's one thing that was going to happen to TSM in the next season, it's Remco out. This team has not worked for many different reasons.
Yeah, I see Magnus and Metzer sticking together for rival series and picking up a new third.
Possibly. I think what they did... that wasn't that complexity, because that was after they removed Metz and RS from that last team, so never mind that. I'm being a fucking idiot. But yeah, they're in dire straits, and they haven't got many options at the end of the day. So that's TSM in a shit situation. Let's move on to the rival series risers. RCD Espanyol, we talked a little bit in detail about them in the bubble scene context. And I think that what we said last week about them potentially having another season in rival series seems to ring true. I don't feel like this team will be able to... I don't feel like this team will be able to...
Too clutch.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's too clutch, and against rival series teams as well. Against a team like Endpoint, I feel like they'll struggle. I think against TSM have a chance if they face RCD to go to Game 7. I don't think they will. I think that personally they will fall down pretty easy. But RCD, I feel like their road is to lose into the losers finals and then get dicked on by Solari, for example. I just don't see a way that they'll be able to contend against that team.
So the only thing which we can hold at the moment is, and you might hate me for saying it, Jay, is the European Invitational. Because there we did get to see Endpoint go up against RCD Espanyol in what was one of the actual better series of the entire tournament. It was like losers, do you count that as semis, I guess? Like the decider match to who goes into losers finals, and that went all the way to Game 7. Was actually quite interesting to see. But I see Endpoint, like we said, as they were fighting and trying to stay up, I see Endpoint going into that, looking back over how RCD Espanyol played, and they'll do the research. Endpoint are ready for that now. RCD Espanyol, it felt like they're playing another series, and that's going to be the big difference. I see RCD Espanyol maybe taking a couple of things away on how to beat Endpoint, but just preparation on Endpoint's end being better. And RCD Espanyol going to struggle probably to adapt on the fly.
Yeah, and that kind of is the case of their whole season so far for RCD. You know, they've struggled in the rival series. I think they're going to struggle here. Again, I feel like it
feels so weird to say RCD struggled in the rival series when they're coming out like second, you know, but it was just, again, how many fucking game fives were there?
That's the thing, right? Like, it's something that people have been doing on subreddit quite a lot recently. Is they've been taking like game 5s and game 7s and they've been like, what if we reverse the results? That last game went the other way, and then you see how different the tables look, and it's like, well, you know, RCD, maybe it's not quite as confident as we might have thought. Certainly they had a great early season. I think we got caught up in that hype, but you know, here I think it's time to be a bit more realistic. This is a step up. Their performance has not been anything to write home about. I feel like, I mean, yeah, it's been good.
If they make it through, fine, we're not going to be upset. I think I would love to see RCD Espanyol in the RLCS, but you know, if you're speaking with your head statistically, I think it is Solari and Endpoint, you know.
No, I agree. And on that note, let's talk about Solari, because as we mentioned last week, these guys were the best in show outside of the teams that were promoted. I think they've got the best chance of promoting here. I think that you know, overcoming the likes of Endpoint will be a bit difficult. Obviously, they're seeded in the lower seed, and Endpoint is seeded in the higher seed, so they might drop to the lower bracket early on. But I think dealing with TSM and RCD should be no worries for Solari, in my opinion. You know, like I feel like the only case where they won't promote is if somehow Endpoint lost to RCD in those winners finals, and then Endpoint swept them out of the losers finals as well. Like, I think that's the only scenario in which Solari don't promote this season. Other than that, you know, I think that this team probably should be able to have a good old time against TSM, and again, should have a good old time against the likes of RCD. I think that maybe in the rival series, let me just quickly go ahead and verify this. They might have been one of the teams to take a win above RCD. No, sorry, BES took a win. 3-2. But their results against them was still a 3-2. So it's still possible for Solari to adjust what they need to adjust and take a 3-2 victory back, or even go further than that, you know?
So the way I look at Solari taking this promotion playoffs is RCD is the only team they care about. Their natural play style will absolutely fucking dick on TSM like most teams will. So that's absolutely fine. They don't have to worry about TSM. Endpoint, I feel like they're going to look, and then they look at that and they go, okay, Endpoint or RCD, what is our more achievable opponent to beat, you know? And I feel like they just look and go, we stack, and they put all their bets on RCD to take them on down and come up with a strategy that completely ruins RCD. And I feel that's how Solari are going to take this, because like I said, I think they look towards Endpoint and they go, Endpoint are going to be not so worried about TSM. They've got a good general idea of how RCD play, because they can look back over. So that's how I think they're going to be smart about it and look at how Endpoint looks at it. You know, they're going to be focusing on those two, and then they as a team are okay against very heavy aggressive teams. So I think Solari, again, it's just everyone is focused on RCD, and RCD again, why we think they're going to drop this season is RCD is the, I don't want to say the guinea pig of every other team, but the one that every other team is going to absolutely bully, you know?
No, they will. And I think that, again, it's going to be a harsh little time for RCD, because I think that at the start of the season we thought they were ready to promote, but they probably do another season in rival series, I think, at this point. So
they've got to be more convincing. That's it, because if they go up now, I'm worried we're going to see another discombobulator / Endpoint where they drop down, you know, where they look good in rival series, but as soon as they get up to RLCS, the cracks show. Even then, you could argue the same about, you know, ASM. Actually, I see very much all the hallmarks of ASM and RCD where they look fantastic, you know, and Tox being that same sort of player as what Extra is, of how, fuck me, they're well above the rest of the team. But doesn't, you've got to have more than one mid-table RLCS ready player to be able to make it up into the RLCS. Like, I'm going to be brutally honest and say that, yeah, I think both Stake and Zamwe, they are top of RLRS, but they are not RLCS caliber just yet. They need that another season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what they'll be able to do next season. But for now, RCD probably most likely to crumble, and that should lead us into our I don't want to say prediction. I don't want to say pick 'em, but prediction bracket. So let's go through the upper bracket, then the lower bracket, see where we're going to go with this one. For me, I'm going to see Endpoint going over Solari, RCD going over TSM, and then Endpoint going over RCD to make their way back into the Championship Series. Then from the lower bracket, Solari should be able to beat TSM, and then I think they'll also beat RCD Espanyol to qualify and promote to the Championship Series. Is that how you see this one going?
Yep, exactly the same there. Yeah, TSM, like I said, I reckon are going to be double one out. Maybe you could see Solari take Endpoint in the upper bracket, I think. But yeah, I see Solari go through lowers, Endpoint go through uppers. If that don't happen, it's just swapped on over. And realistically, I think if Espanyol does get through, it's going to be in the upper bracket, because as soon as they drop down, I think the actual extra bit of oomph that both teams will get will be enough to push RCD Espanyol out. Like, they come in clutch, but I think this is going to be the time where they can't clutch their way through.
Agreed. 100% agreed from my perspective. So there you go. That's our predictions and our preview for the European promotion playoffs. Of course, that all takes place on April the 12th on twitch.tv/Rocket League. So make sure you're tuning into that, as we will be this coming weekend. Yes, I believe from... Oh, shit. What's the time again? I forget. First one is Endpoint Solari. It's at 5 p.m. BST, 6 p.m. CEST, 1700 and 1800, as I always seem to get those numbers confused. But there you go. That's where Endpoint Solari kicks off. That's where the promotions kick off. And everything is going to go down again on this coming Sunday night. And for us here on Aftershock, that's going to be our podcast for this week sorted. Quite a little bit of a jam-packed week. Again, focusing in on the bubble scene teams. And we're going to be focusing in a little bit more on bubble scene going forward. Assuming nothing else gets announced from the Psyonix camp of things, but there could always be changes. Rocket League could be a very, very different place, I feel like, here, Bacon.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, when you look at it, we're coming up to a very interesting off season as it is, purely because, like I said, we're gonna have these promotion relegations going off, and then you've got Spring Series, which as finally Psyonix doing like an open online tournament. So many cool teams could come out of the woodworks that we could see like another. I mean, they're not around now per se. Echo Zulu coming through, but I mean that team is still technically alive, and it's just quite awesome to see that any team could make it through. And I think we will get one big upset surprise team make it through to that Spring Series.
We'll bring you all of that information as time goes on, but for now, we're going to have to get off your screens and out of your ears to continue on with the rest of your days. If you have enjoyed, of course, make sure you're following the podcast on every single channel that you can, of course, at RLAftershock on Twitter, and of course, the brand new website, RLAftershock.com, where we will be updating you about all stories that we talked about here and others as well as time goes on. We'll be breaking stories, doing some reports about some of the interesting roster moves that we've found out. We'll be verifying whatever sources we can and giving you all that information as and when we receive it. And of course, you can follow the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/RLAftershock, where we'll be going live hopefully very soon indeed, but that's all to be discussed later on down the road. And of course, the podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and YouTube, alongside several other audio distribution platforms. You can go to anchor.fm/RLAftershock to find your favorite platform or request your favorite way to listen. Bacon, any final words before we get out of here?
Just that I've got a big question. It's been really annoying me over this last weekend that I thought about it. Are battle cars or rocket cars, whatever you want to call them, little like RC cars, or is there an actual Eggman inside that vehicle? Like, this has really been annoying me now that it's got in my head.
I think the law already discerns them as RC cars, Bacon. I think that, because they got the antennas on the back.
After a demo, it's not actually hurting someone?
No one's dying in the game. Okay, that's why it's the PG game. Oh, dear. Right, that's going to be it from us here. We'll be back next week with even more of the Aftershock.